You can't have children, right? That's why I'm entrusting you with this child. Be grateful. If you can't bear a child, at least contribute to society by raising one. I struggled to comprehend what was being said to me. Then, unbelievably, my sister abandoned her daughter, who was suffering from a rare disease. Is this really what a parent should do? We will make sure this child is happy and make her regret abandoning her, I vowed. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old and have been a housewife for 8 years. Initially, my in-laws often pressured us about having children. My friends talked about the wonders of parenthood, yet also mentioned the lack of freedom, sleepless nights, and sacrifices made out of love. But my husband and I despised that notion. It's not that we dislike children, we're just not good with them. That's an undeniable fact. After 8 years, it seemed like everyone realized and stopped bringing it up. I know it's selfish, but right now, I have too many things I want to do and can't devote time to a child. Such parents wouldn't be good for any child. I was raised as an adopted child, so I'm not fixated on blood relations. I even thought about adopting when I got older. My husband, Henry, is understanding. He always says, if we're blessed with a child, I'll mainly take care of it and support you. People who can't have children might envy us, but as someone who was abandoned by her parents, I couldn't be irresponsible. Friends' kids who were in elementary school or kindergarten seemed well-educated and cute. Maybe children born out of desire feel their parents' love. Of course, I consider the two who raised me as my real parents, and I'm grateful for them. I have an older sister who is 2 years my senior. Her name is Linda. Our parents wanted siblings but could only have one, so they adopted me. We got along well when we were young, but she started to dislike me as I had better grades. You wouldn't be compared, and all the money would have been spent on me if you weren't here, she once said. For the sake of my parents' honor, I must say that they showered both of us with love and resources, not just mentally but emotionally too. They never compared us, not once. It was only Linda who felt inferior on her own. She just chose not to study, whereas I did. That led to comparisons, and it was frustrating for me, maybe because she hated studying. Linda decided to pursue a career as an internet idol, using our parents' money to purchase all the necessary equipment. However, she never truly put in the effort. Looking at successful people, one might think it's easy, but it requires relentless work. That was always Linda's problem, underestimating things. Despite not lacking in looks, Linda had her fans, and among them, the most generous was Mark. They ended up in a shotgun marriage, perhaps because Linda thought he was wealthy. Unfortunately, it turned out he was in debt from spending on her. Even our parents hesitated, but not wanting to see their grandchild suffer, they paid off his debts and secured him a job. The job paid well. With Linda and her husband's lives finally stabilizing, unfortunately, Linda's poor financial sense persisted, preventing them from saving anything. Then, one day, Linda's daughter, Karen, suddenly fell ill. There were signs earlier, but Linda's reluctance to seek medical help due to stinginess had delayed intervention. When I arrived after Linda's urgent call, Karen was lying in bed connected to tubes. I was informed that Karen's kidneys were failing, and they wanted me to get tested to see if I was a match. While I would have refused if it were just for Linda's sake, I was fond of Karen. She was remarkably sensible for a 7-year-old, and I often thought of her as the kind of daughter I'd like. Despite my expectations, I turned out to be a match. Please, I'll definitely make it up to you. Save Karen, Linda begged. I wanted to believe her sincerity, so I agreed to the test. After the successful operation, Karen was out of danger. However, the real challenges emerged afterward. Linda hadn't insured Karen, leading to substantial medical costs. Then Linda approached me again, pleading for financial assistance. I can't ask our parents anymore, and I need this to be kept secret, she confided. I wondered about Mark's role, given his decent salary from the job Dad had found for him. But Linda sneered. That salary is nothing if our parents find out about our spending. Mark might get fired, and we'd be on the streets. Is that what you want? though tempted to agree, especially with Karen's health at stake. I couldn't bear to see her being used as a pawn. "I'll lend you the money, but you have to write a promissory note," I insisted. Linda reluctantly agreed, signing the note without bothering to read it. Reflecting on this, I realized why Linda never managed to save any money. Her habit of exploiting situations, even her daughter's illness, was despicable. Despite having such parents, Karen turned out well, which impressed me greatly. After that, I began visiting Karen's hospital room more often. Was it because I had donated a kidney or because I had lent them money? No, it was out of pity for Karen. Karen mentioned to me that I visited more frequently than Linda, who now seemed to regard me with coldness. After a lengthy course of treatment, Karen ended up needing a wheelchair for mobility. Then, on the day she was to be discharged, an incident occurred. An unknown number called, and since it was my day off, I answered. "Hello, is this Sarah's phone?" "This is General Hospital," the voice said. "Karen's hospital. Thank you." "You have the right number," I replied. "Sorry to bother you, but Karen's hospital bill is unpaid, and today she's supposed to be discharged. But no one has come for her, and we can't reach her parents." A sudden chill ran down my spine, and my heart clenched. Without realizing it, I was already on my way to the hospital. I got into a taxi and called Linda. "What are you doing today? Is today Karen's discharge day?" I couldn't stay calm and ended up shouting. "Can you lower your voice?" "I can hear you," Linda replied calmly. "I don't want that kid, so I'm giving her to you. It's perfect since you can't have children, right? If you can't have your own, at least contribute to society by raising one." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're the worst, just like my birth parents. You don't deserve to be a parent," I exclaimed. "And what about the hospital bills?" I could hear Linda's laughter over the phone. "Sorry, I spent it. It's hard to resist when you suddenly get a lot of money. I've been wanting to do something for a while. It's useless to tell Mark. He can't go against me. He married an idol like he wanted. He can't resist me. He's fine with getting rid of the child anyway. We can't pay, so if you don't take her, she might as well be gone, right?" I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I don't remember, but maybe my birth parents were like this, I thought. This is my battle of mourning, a revenge against the parents who abandoned me, more than anything. I couldn't bear the thought of handing Karen over to Linda. "Fine, I'll pay the hospital bills and take Karen as my child. Consider it a severance payment," I declared. "Really? I was worried about how to repay the money I borrowed." "But you'll pay that too?" Linda's heartless reasoning appalled me. With a total of $100,000 gained and a chance to reset my life, the idea of abandoning a daughter in a wheelchair to have another child solely for future support felt utterly repugnant. I didn't want to continue the conversation. I hung up, apologizing profusely to the hospital, completing the payment promptly, and arranging, through lawyers, a private adoption for Karen to officially become our child. When Karen officially became ours, I was apprehensive about Henry's reaction. To my relief, he embraced the decision warmly. "That's why I love you," he said tenderly. "I can't forgive Linda either. A family of 3 will surely be fun." His words moved me to tears. I felt immensely grateful to have married such a wonderful person. My parents probably thought it was best for Karen's rehabilitation and care to be with us. They even offered to help. Linda seemed somewhat resentful, perhaps worried about our parents discovering the truth about the money. She didn't dare visit. When I honestly explained the situation to Karen, she surprised me with her calm acceptance. "So Mom and Dad never visited me. Now, Sarah, you're my mom." "Sorry if I'm not used to it yet," she said softly. Though she accepted it outwardly, I could sense her silent tears. I used to think I had so many things I wanted to do, but now, Karen has become my reason for living. Having been involved with her since birth, albeit indirectly, it didn't take long for me to develop deep affection. Witnessing a young child struggling and crying during rehabilitation, even if she's not my biological child, filled me with determination to support her. Karen was a real trooper, finding ways to overcome obstacles with her indomitable spirit. Despite her disability, Karen always gave her best, and I, consumed by supporting her to the fullest, forgot about the money concerns. With the unwavering support of my parents, Karen grew rapidly through rehabilitation. She gained some movement in her right leg, still relying on a wheelchair but becoming more capable with each passing day. When Karen turned 9, she expressed a desire to emulate a particular person. By then, she had grown accustomed to calling me Mom and Henry Dad. She showed me a video of a blind pianist. That's cool, but it must be hard, right? Don't you need a special sense for that? I asked. To my astonishment, Karen opened a piano app on her tablet and effortlessly played the piece from the video. Did you practice a lot? I inquired. Well, I just listened and remembered it. It's kind of like I just get it, she explained. Impressed, I asked her to play a commercial jingle from TV, and once again, she flawlessly reproduced it after hearing it just once. That's incredible. Maybe you have perfect pitch, I mused. Excitedly, I showed Henry, who was equally amazed. Let's buy a grand piano and maybe build a bigger room for it. Perhaps we should consider building a new house, he suggested. Over the next 2 years, Henry had become a devoted father, always spoiling Karen. 5 years later, Linda reached out through our parents, prompting a discussion. I left the kids with my parents and met Linda and Mark in the living room of my childhood home, careful not to reveal our current address. What do you want? I asked bluntly, noticing the drastic changes in Linda's appearance. You moved away and cut off all contact. And what's with that figure? I hardly recognize you, I added. My parents had informed me that Linda was amidst divorce proceedings due to infidelity, and she had gained weight from overeating and drinking. Mark was there, seemingly coerced by Linda. He probably wanted to see his daughter one last time, but he seemed disappointed not to find her there. Since then, Linda and Mark hadn't had any more children, and I couldn't help but see it as poetic justice. I would lose faith in any god that would repeatedly bless such irresponsible people with children. However, I remained grateful that they gave me Karen. You're not asking for money again, are you? I asked skeptically as Linda began her plea. Please, I need treatment. I've developed diabetes from binge eating and drinking. I can't work, and the treatment is expensive. We may not be blood related, but we're still sisters, right? Help me, she pleaded, her gestures seeming insincere. I began by returning the $50,000. Linda looked confused. You didn't read the promissory note, did you? I guess you don't have it anymore. That money is a settled issue, isn't it? It's insincere to bring it up now, she retorted, her tone grating on my nerves. Irritated, I decided to enlighten her. I only waived the money I paid for your hospitalization. I never said anything about waiving the loan you misunderstood. And since we couldn't find you, we gave up. Remember, I said I'd take the hospital and surgery expenses as severance. You haven't repaid the money you embezzled, but now I can claim it, I explained. Linda, defiant as ever, responded, I came here because I have no money, and now you're going to bill me? Just then, the door of the next room swung open, revealing Karen. Dignified even with pain etched on her face, Karen had inherited all the good features from Linda, making her an extraordinary beauty. Is that Karen? You've grown? Linda exclaimed, attempting to regain control. Look, you can tell, right? She's grown up to be so much like me. Karen's disdainful look was palpable. Who are you? She asked coldly, her tone cutting through the tension. Karen, don't talk like that. She's your mom, Linda insisted. Karen pointed at me and Henry. Mom is right here, and Dad is next to her, she declared firmly. I felt tears welling up. I had become a doting parent too, something I never thought would happen. Besides, you have a $50,000 debt and are getting divorced, right? How are you going to raise Karen, who still needs a wheelchair? I interjected. Mark can take care of it, Linda replied arrogantly. Of course, he can't defy me. Seriously, is she an idiot? She muttered under her breath, unaware that Karen was already defying her by going through divorce proceedings. Then, unexpectedly, Mark stood up, declaring, "Enough is enough. I'm fed up. I can't stand it anymore, Sarah. I'm sorry for everything. I promised to pay off the debt." Mark, who had always been submissive, was now red-faced and angry at Linda. "I'll take over the compensation money for you and start over. The debt is only being shouldered temporarily. I don't want to trouble Karen anymore. Even if I'm a failed father, I must take responsibility." Addressing Linda directly, Mark continued, "I heard from friends that you've been bad-mouthing me behind my back. Now you have 0 fans. You're betraying me too." Linda tried to act tough, but Mark's words seemed to hit her hard. Her face turned bright red as Mark turned to us and said he would contact us later, then left. While I didn't sympathize with Mark, I hoped he wouldn't be brainwashed again by Linda. Then Henry dropped a bombshell. "By the way, Mom and Dad know about your current debt. They told me not to come out today. They didn't want to see their own daughter's downfall and wanted to protect my son." Linda had misunderstood. Not wanting kids and being unable to have them are entirely different. "We just chose not to," I clarified. I patiently explained the adoption to Linda, informing her that she no longer had parental rights. Linda blustered one last time before finally relenting. As she left in a hurry, I showed her a video site featuring Karen. "What's this? Why is Karen in it?" Linda asked. "Karen has perfect pitch. We made videos of her playing impromptu piano pieces as part of her rehabilitation, and they went viral. She's now a famous influencer for her beauty and talent," I explained. Since then, Mark had apologized and worked hard, borrowing money from my parents for the job they'd helped him get. My father trusted Mark and decided to lend him the money interest-free, with a promise that Mark would pay back monthly. Now Linda, with no one to turn to and estranged, was reportedly suffering from diabetes and living on welfare. She was unrecognizable from her days as an internet idol. I had initially thought Karen would thwart my dreams, but thanks to her, my dreams had come true. Karen had received numerous invitations to perform worldwide, not just as a wheelchair pianist, but for her pure talent. My dream was to travel the world, and I fully support Karen as her manager, I proudly declared. As Karen's popularity soared, she often returned to America to spend time with the family. Recently, Karen thanked me out of the blue. "Because of you, Mom, I have this life. Your kidney inside me will never be apart, and that makes me happy." These words from Karen were what I had longed to hear, echoing my own feelings towards my birth parents. Karen's music continued to enrich the soul, and I couldn't help but feel vindicated. If Linda hadn't been so twisted, perhaps her life would have been different. Without even seeing them, I felt I understood the likely unhappy lives of my birth parents. Karen had truly become a beacon of light in our lives. My name is Karen, and I'm a 25-year-old employee. 6 months ago, my grandfather, who raised me, passed away. Today marks the day when the lawyer will open my grandfather's will. That's why I find myself at my grandfather's house, accompanied by my sister Susan, who is 4 years older and my only family. Our parents tragically passed away in an accident 20 years ago, leaving us in the care of our grandparents. Since our grandmother succumbed to illness a few years back, our grandfather's health had been deteriorating steadily, and he frequently fell ill. Out of concern, I lived in an apartment near his house and often checked on him. "You're a grown woman. It's unbecoming to keep coming back home," my grandfather would jest, although he was always cheerful. Then, one day, as I went to visit him as usual, I found him in pain at the entrance. In a panic, I called for an ambulance, but he passed away suddenly. "Hey, what are you daydreaming for? At least prepare some tea." My sister's voice snapped me back to reality. "Right, the lawyer will be here soon," I responded, heading to the kitchen. Glancing back, I saw my sister lazily stretching out her legs on the mat, yawning. Even in the kitchen, I could still catch a whiff of her strong perfume, and I made a face. "She's the same as always," I murmured under my breath, placing the kettle on the stove. My sister had always been self-centered. As a teenager, she dyed her hair and associated with troublemakers, always demanding money without working. Even when her antics caused trouble, she remained unfazed, leaving me to deal with the fallout. It seemed she hadn't changed much as an adult, with no stable job and drifting around, relying on part-time work. I knew she had been asking our grandfather for money when I wasn't around, and I could only imagine how she'd find it troublesome if not for the inheritance. Ah, you must be the lawyer. Thank you for coming today. I heard my sister's high-pitched, formal voice announcing the lawyer's arrival. Hurriedly, I placed tea leaves into the teapot and made my way back to the entrance. Thank you for coming today, I greeted the lawyer. I had met him at the funeral, and his eyes held the same kindness as my grandfather's. A lawyer's badge gleamed on his chest. After we offered incense in front of my grandfather's portrait, he graciously accepted the tea I served before retrieving my grandfather's will. It had been entrusted to him while my grandfather was still alive. The contents were straightforward. My elder sister Susan was to inherit $20 million in cash, and I, the younger daughter, was to inherit this house and the land it sits on, I read aloud. Upon hearing this, my sister burst into laughter. $20 million in cash for the elder daughter, and only an old house for the younger one? How hilarious. It's just right for someone as plain as you, she remarked with a sneer. It's not just the house. There's also the land, I retorted, to which she chuckled snidely. Huh, the value of this land in such a god-forsaken place is hardly surprising. Ah, I would have preferred cash. I guess Grandpa must have had a soft spot for me after all, she commented. I can't deny that I am a bit shocked. I suppose my grandfather wanted me to protect his beloved house and land, where he spent his life with my grandmother, I replied thoughtfully. Huh? A house and land? That's pretty awesome, isn't it? Brian, my boyfriend, exclaimed in surprise after hearing my story. I shook my head, implying it's not as great as it sounds. Not really. My sister inherited $20 million in cash. That's more impressive, I admitted, feeling a sense of emptiness as I said it aloud. Even though I was being modest, verbalizing it felt like an acknowledgement. Wow, beautiful and have money. Now she's the more the better victory, Brian remarked insensitively. Shooting him a side glance, I noted his gap in sensitivity. Realizing his misstep, he joked, Your comfort means more to me than money, Karen. Brian had been my boyfriend since I started working. We met at a social event, and being of the same age, we clicked well. I introduced him to my grandfather and my sister. While he hadn't proposed yet, I had been considering marriage. Today was our first date in the wild, and I ended up telling Brian about my inheritance. I suppose it was because I thought he would become my husband someday. I had no idea I would come to regret this. A few days later, I found myself visiting the family home I had inherited from my grandfather. I had intended to clean and sort out my grandfather's belongings. The property was large, but the house was modest. I figured I could manage it on my own. As I looked around the house, I pondered, it's close to my workplace. Maybe I should move here. Living here leisurely with a cat doesn't sound too bad. There would be no rent to pay, and while there might be maintenance costs for deterioration, I have been working hard and saving, so it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe someday with Brian. Feeling embarrassed at the thought, I shook my head vigorously and rolled up my sleeves to begin cleaning. Just then, I received a call. My sister's name appeared on my smartphone screen. Sis, what's up? I answered. Hey, Karen, having fun all by yourself in that old house? My sister sounded drunk. She always had a unique way of extending her words, but today it was particularly bad. Since you're drinking, aren't you? It's still afternoon, I pointed out with a sigh, to which she exaggeratedly sighed back. Oh, you're such a Miss Goody Two-Shoes. I was right. She had been drinking. I was thinking about moving here, I confessed. Eventually, I answered my sister's question, hoping to end the conversation quickly. Really? I'm enjoying a suite in a luxury hotel right now. My sister raised her voice in a somewhat exaggerated way. Guess who I'm with right now? I have no idea, I replied flatly. Boring. It's that kind of attitude that'll make Brian dislike you, she retorted. What? I was taken aback when Brian's voice unexpectedly intervened on the line. His sudden intervention threw me off balance, and dizzying question marks popped up in my head. But I resented my imagination. At this point, a disgusting scenario had already formed in my mind. Surprised? Huh. My sister's mean-spirited voice chimed in. Ever since you introduced him to me, I thought Brian was quite a catch. She proceeded to boast about how she had been attracted to Brian since I introduced him, how she knew where he worked because of me, and how she had approached him as soon as he left work. He readily came along when she asked, telling her that she was hundreds of times more attractive than me. Stunned into silence, I listened to her revelations. Karen, I'm really sorry. Brian's voice broke the silence. Tell me it's a mistake, I managed to utter, but he spoke again before I could continue. As a man, I had to take this opportunity. Brian justified, his tone as if asking me to understand. I do feel bad about it, but come on, it's impossible to resist a beautiful woman who has $20 million, right? The way he spoke, as if seeking my approval, drained my emotions away. I felt a cold sensation, as if my blood was being drained from me. You know what? I don't need a man like you, I finally uttered. At my words, I could hear my sister laughing uproariously in the background. The voice on the phone changed back to my sister's. Well, that's how it is, and from now on, let's not consider ourselves sisters, okay? I wouldn't want you turning to me just because you're broke. My sister's words echoed in my ears as she ended the call. Overwhelmed by emotions that had lagged behind, all I could do was cry out. 5 years had passed since then. I had a cat in my lap, dozing off in front of my laptop, purring contentedly in sleep. Today was my day off, but there was still a bit of work left from what I brought home. Oh no, this won't get the work done, I murmured guiltily as I gently moved the cat off my lap. Just as I reached out, my phone started to ring, displaying an unfamiliar number on my smartphone. Thinking it could be work-related, I answered the call without any suspicion. Hello? I greeted. Karen, long time no see. The voice on the other end instantly made me freeze. It was unmistakably my sister's distinctive way of speaking. It's you, Karen, isn't it? I can tell just from your initial hello. After all, I'm your big sister. 5 years had passed, which should make Susan 34. A smirk formed at the corner of my mouth at her unchanging way of talking. You're just the same, I remarked. By the way, I came home and there's a hotel standing. Did you sell the house? Susan inquired. That's none of your business, I replied curtly. Oh, come on. It's quite a grand hotel, huh? You must have made a good chunk of change, huh? She prodded. Getting fed up. I was about to end the call when she started to chatter about her current situation. According to Susan, she had blown through the inheritance in about 2 years and now had a considerable amount of debt. Even Brian, whom she was still hanging around, seemed to be drowning in debt. I was speechless. Honestly, I couldn't care less. So, lend me some money, Susan demanded. Against Susan's yelling, I answered calmly, I've always wondered why Grandpa distributed his estate that way, but on the day you took Brian from me and cut ties, I understood. I started talking slowly. 5 years ago, when Brian broke up with me, I was crushed. After crying my heart out, I sat dazed in my room, staring into space. I'm such a fool, I murmured as large tears began to spill again. My gaze fell on a painting I had made as a child and had gifted to my grandfather. He had framed it and kept it hanging lovingly. Rising unsteadily, I picked up the painting. Grandpa, I whispered. When feelings of nostalgia and loneliness welled up and tears started to come, I felt something drop from the back of the frame. Picking it up, I saw it was a fresh sheet of notepaper addressed to me. I remembered how, when I was little, I used to stick notes on the back of this frame and exchange secret messages with my grandfather. It was like a family journal, really. Knowing that I was to inherit the house, he probably figured I'd find this note. I'm glad I noticed. I shuddered at the thought that I might have left it unnoticed. To Karen, the date on the letter was just before my grandfather passed. I knew you definitely noticed this letter. Right now, you're probably wondering why I distributed my estate in such a manner, cash to your sister, and an old house and land for you. It may seem like I favored Susan, but that's not the case. Despite any claims of favoritism, I wanted to leave most of my estate to you, who cared for me till the end. I finally understood what had been bothering me. No matter what, Grandpa thought more of me, huh? I muttered. I'm sure I was deeply hurt by Susan's words at that time. Despite having loved my grandfather more, a kind of jealousy clouded my thoughts as I continued to read the letter. But Susan would not be satisfied with a regular division. This child, even as her grandfather, I must admit, she's terribly greedy. Exactly, Grandpa. She even took my boyfriend from me. That's what I want to tell him in my heart. That's why I arranged it this way. If at first glance Susan appears to have received the better deal, she won't pay attention to your share. According to Grandfather's letter, the value of this land in our area is continuously increasing due to ongoing urban development. As of the time he wrote the letter, it's not worth Susan's $20 million yet, but the value of this land will surely increase in the future. When I read this far, my eyes widened in surprise. You can live here if you're attached to it, or you can sell it when its value rises enough to make a good profit. All I want is for you to be happy, the letter conveyed. When I finished conveying the content of the letter, Susan clicked her tongue and said, "Hag." I lived in that house for a while, but when my marriage was settled, I decided to sell the house. Just like Grandfather's letter said, the land value had risen enough anyway. I'm never lending you money. Susan seemed frustrated, but as if she had a good idea, she said, "Right. If you want, I can give Brian back to you, so help your sister. It's a good deal, right?" At that moment, I heard something snap inside of me. Enough is enough. You've been taken care of by Grandpa, and yet you haven't shown a hint of gratitude. I despise you for that, and you're not my sister anymore. Besides, I'm already married. I don't need Brian, and I don't even want to see his face. Stay out of my life for good. I said what I needed to say and hung up. I quickly set up call blocking, and my cat on my lap was cowering on the bed. I quickly picked up my cat and said, "I'm sorry." After that, it seems Susan contacted Brian, and they both stormed into our old house. Did they try to return Brian to me? There's a respectable end there now, but they must have misunderstood something and were shouting that they were my relatives, even though I just sold the land and had nothing to do with it. It's simple for those two, sold the land, and an end was built equals I must be the owner of the end. Of course, the staff reported to the police. The two of them were arrested because they had destroyed several items in the end. Furthermore, it was discovered that they had been committing marriage fraud for money in the past. Seems they'll be sent to prison together. I was also questioned by the police, but I was able to prove that I had no involvement quickly as we were estranged and was released. As my husband, who came to pick me up, and I were walking through the station, we heard screaming and turned our gaze, and there were Susan and Brian, who looked completely different. Fortunately, they didn't notice us. Both of them had messy hair, worn-out clothes, and looked nothing like the two people I remember, especially Susan, who never skipped her makeup in fashion, looked even more different. They were probably being moved into a different location. As I watched the two of them, filled with a sense of melancholy, my husband and I locked eyes. I grabbed the hand he extended, and we left the police station. "Are you okay?" My husband, always concerned, looked at me with gentle eyes. "I'm okay. I have you and this little one," I said, touching my fairly noticeable belly, and smiled back. "In my belly, a new member of our family is growing. We're getting a divorce. Which one of us do you girls want to live with?" Our eldest daughter, Sally, was the first to respond. "I want to live with Dad," she declared. "What?" My husband was shocked by her words. Our second daughter, Molly, chimed in. "Me too. I want to stay with Dad," she affirmed. The twins also expressed their desire to be with their father. Kevin looked like he was turning blue hearing what our daughters were saying. "If that's what the kids want, You have the responsibility to take care of them, you know. I reminded him. My name is Sarah, a 45-year-old office worker. I married Kevin when I was 25. Despite numerous arguments and near divorces, we managed to stay together for 20 years, mostly because of our children. We have 4 kids, our oldest in her senior year of high school, our second daughter a sophomore, and the twins currently in 8th grade. We never expected to have such a large family, but they all get along and Kevin and I are doing well. Now that our daughters are grown, I'm lucky I don't have to worry about them all the time. I can focus on work, especially since we live in a house owned by my grandfather, so there's no rent or loan stress. Watching my children grow up has been the greatest joy. Sally's applying for college, and we support her studies by making midnight snacks. As they've grown older, Kevin and I have found more time for ourselves, thanks to the kids helping with chores. Kevin's job change has made a significant difference. He's more relaxed, smiling more often, and even suggests going on vacations. He's an amazing husband who cares deeply for our family. This year marks our 20th anniversary, and the children had planned a celebration. However, something unexpected happened before we could celebrate. During one dinner, my second daughter, Molly, seemed rather distant. She didn't respond much, and it was clear she had something on her mind. I figured it might be the onset of puberty, but I decided to check in with her after dinner. Molly, can I talk to you? I asked as gently as I could. Mum, she replied softly. Is something bothering you? You seemed a little off today. I expressed my concern. Yeah, she admitted hesitantly. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here to listen, I assured her, preparing to leave her room. But just as I turned to go, she stopped me. Wait, she said, and I paused, closing the door again. Actually, she began, trailing off into an uncomfortable silence. My nerves spiked as I waited for her next words. Then, unexpectedly, she dropped a bombshell. I saw Dad working with a woman I don't know, she confessed. What? I exclaimed, struggling to process the revelation. Maybe it was someone from the office, I suggested, trying to rationalize. No, I don't think so. They were working? Closely, Molly clarified. I was speechless. Was my husband having an affair? While we lacked concrete evidence, the intimacy described left little room for doubt. I'm sorry you've had to see that, I apologized, feeling a mix of emotions. Why are you apologizing? You've done nothing wrong, Mom, Molly reassured me. But you must have hated sitting at the table with Dad and eating dinner with them. I realized, feeling a pang of guilt. Well, yeah, she admitted. Thank you for telling me. That was a very brave thing to do. I commended her, grateful for her honesty. I'll look into it, okay? I promised, determined to get to the bottom of things. I couldn't shake the sadness I felt for Molly and the burden she carried. If Kevin was indeed cheating, it was unacceptable. How could he plan a family vacation while betraying our trust? Was it all just an act? In any case, I needed more evidence. So I made the difficult decision to reach out to a private detective. A few weeks passed, and I finally received the results of the investigation. To my dismay, the conclusion was clear. Kevin was indeed having an affair. The shock hit me like a tidal wave. Deep down, I had hoped it wasn't true, but reality crashed down on me. With a heavy heart, I shared the news with Molly. Her reaction mirrored my own disbelief. She had always looked up to Kevin as a father figure, so I could only imagine how devastating this revelation was for her. I can't believe it, Dad, Molly uttered, her voice tinged with disappointment. Mom, you are divorcing him, right? She asked, her eyes searching for confirmation. Yes, I replied solemnly, my mind reeling with the weight of the decision. Well, I have to speak to all of the girls to see what they want, Molly insisted, her resolve firm. I can't stand having a dad who cheats on you, Mom. Okay, I'll go and get everybody so we can talk. I agreed, preparing to gather the family for a difficult conversation. It was a Saturday, and the children were all at home. Kevin claimed he had work to attend to, but I couldn't shake the doubt gnawing at me. As I sat down with my daughters and revealed Kevin's betrayal, their reactions mirrored my own shock and disgust. Unbelievable. One of them whispered, capturing the collective sentiment of our shattered family. Sally looks like she could throw up, she says, visibly disturbed. Even the twins, though only in junior high, understand what an affair entails. Do you think I should divorce your dad? I ask them, seeking their input. The children nod in unison, affirming that they'll stay with me after the separation. If that's the case, there's no reason to continue my marriage, I conclude. Deciding to divorce Kevin, I wait until he's home to break the news. Sitting him down on the sofa in our living room, I brace myself for the difficult conversation. I need to talk to you. I begin, but before I can say more, he blurts out something unexpected. I'm sorry. I've been having an affair, he confesses. Huh? What? Are you telling me this? I'm taken aback by his sudden admission. She's pregnant, he adds, dropping another bombshell. Pregnant? I repeat, stunned into silence. I hadn't anticipated him willingly disclosing the affair, let alone the news of a pregnancy. So you want to be with this woman? I ask incredulously, trying to process everything. Yeah, I'm sorry, Sarah. I want a divorce so that I can be with her. You can have custody of the children, he says, his tone apologetic, but his words a mess. Who does he think he is? Does he think he'll be forgiven just because he's allowing me to keep the children? I fume internally. You've got to be kidding me. Do you really think you can be so selfish? I retort, unable to contain my anger. Yeah, but she's pregnant, he argues, as if that justifies everything. You're the ones who weren't being safe. You only have yourselves to blame, I shoot back, feeling a surge of frustration. That has nothing to do with me, he insists, his words cutting deep. How can you say that? I shake my head in disbelief. Anyway, I'm going to be with her, so if you think about it, he declares, starting to pack his bags without a hint of shame. As he leaves, seemingly unfazed by the chaos he's caused, the children storm into the living room, their expressions a mix of anger and disbelief. I can't believe it. What was he thinking, talking about us like that? I express my disbelief to my daughters, seething with anger. I hate him, one of my daughters declares, echoing the sentiment shared by all of them. They are absolutely furious at their father's selfish actions. As they had overheard my intention to divorce Kevin, they were listening when he made his selfish claims. I am beyond angry and amazed at Kevin's audacity. The children start discussing something amongst themselves, and then they make a suggestion to me. Initially surprised, I decide to trust my children and go along with their plan. 1 week later, Kevin is back temporarily. Are you ready to get divorced now? My girlfriend's pregnant, so I want to marry her as soon as possible, Kevin states plainly. I can only let out a sigh, frustrated by his selfishness. Okay, let's get a divorce, I agree tersely. Great, thanks, he responds, handing me the divorce papers. As I glance at them, I bring up the issue of custody. About custody. I'm going to let the girls decide, I continue. Huh? Kevin appears slightly nervous. Well, they've already made up their minds. They want to be with you anyway, I inform him. They wouldn't want to be with a father who had an affair and got that girl pregnant, would they? Oh, so you do understand that? Kevin acknowledges, his tone defensive. Okay, let's get them to come here, I suggest, calling the girls to the living room. We're discussing this now, I announce as they gather around. Well, they already know. They know you had an affair, and they know you got her pregnant, I declare, leaving no room for ambiguity. Kevin looks awkwardly around the room, clearly apprehensive about the children's response. When they enter, I pose the question to them. So we're getting a divorce, but which one of us do you girls want to live with? I inquire, hoping for some clarity. Our eldest daughter, Sally, is the first to speak up. I want to live with Dad, she announces confidently. What? Kevin is visibly shocked by her words. Our second daughter, Molly, echoes her sentiments. Me too. I want to stay with Dad, she asserts. The twins also express their desire to be with their father. Kevin looks like he's about to faint, but he manages to stammer out a question. Wait a second. Why do you all want to come with me? Why do you care? He asks, bewildered. The children don't give a clear answer, but they insistently declare that they want to stay with him. If that's what the kids want, you have the responsibility to take care of them, you know. I remind him, resigned to the situation. Reluctantly, Kevin agrees to take care of our 4 daughters. Since I own the house we've been living in, he has to move out. When he tells his new wife, Jennifer, about the children, she's furious, but they manage to sort things out and start living in an apartment. After our divorce, both Kevin and Jennifer compensate me for child support. Since Kevin has a stable income, I don't need to pay anything. The children stay with me on weekends but live in the new apartment during the week. It's been about 2 months since then, and it seems they're adjusting to their new arrangement. However, Kevin and Jennifer's patience seems to wear thin, and they storm into my house one day, visibly upset. Were the girls always like that? They're so selfish, we can't stand it anymore. Kevin exclaims, frustration evident in his voice. Jennifer is equally emotional. How did they end up growing up like that? They complain to me every single day, she laments. Internally, I'm amused by their outburst, but I keep my composure and respond calmly. What are you talking about? They're all very nice girls. They helped around the house when they were living with me, and they never complained about anything. Kevin and Jennifer continue their grievances, citing expenses and the girls' behavior. But I remain firm. That's none of my business. You two have to raise them. I assert, holding my ground. You need to take responsibility. We had to find a place with 4 bedrooms because of all of them moving in. It's completely over my budget, Kevin complains, shifting the blame onto me. You only have yourself to blame, don't you? And besides, Sally and Molly share a room, and so do the twins. You two are in one room. And then you have a room for the baby, right? The girls wanted a room each, but they're happy to share, so you should be grateful. I counter, frustrated by his lack of accountability. That's not what I'm saying. Whatever, you're the one who had an affair in the first place, and I really can't believe you would have a relationship with a 20-year-old girl. She's only 2 years older than Sally. Unbelievable. You're the one who betrayed me, so you have no right to say anything to me. Please, can you leave now? I demand, trying to end the conversation. Kevin and Jennifer suddenly start to panic. Wait, please wait. I came here to say I want you to take them back. We can't cope with it any longer, Kevin pleads, realizing they can't handle the children's behavior anymore. Okay, if you say so. I felt sorry for them for having to live with someone as terrible as you to begin with. But you're going to pay child support until all of them come of age. I decree firmly. What? No way. That's going to be so expensive with 4 girls. Well, they can live with you then. Kevin concedes reluctantly. Okay, I reply, unyielding in my decision. Jennifer is furious at Kevin's acceptance. Wait a second. No, I thought it was just compensation, but in addition to that, we're in this terrible state, and we're going to have to pay child support too? I want a divorce. I'm not going to be poor, she explodes, revealing her true motives. What? Wait a moment. What about a baby? There is no baby. Kevin realizes he's been deceived. I thought if I said I was pregnant, you would get divorced, and I could marry you, and then I would be able to live a wealthy life. Instead, we're heading towards a life of debt. This is unbelievable. Goodbye. I'm never seeing you again. Jennifer storms out, leaving Kevin frozen with shock. I urge him to leave, threatening to call the police if he doesn't comply. He panics and runs out of the house. Later, I go through official procedures to reclaim custody of my children and request child support from Kevin. He pays compensation as well as expensive rent, making it tight for him financially. But I am determined to make him pay, and I will never forgive him for his betrayal. His monthly payment becomes a great burden, leaving him struggling to get by. The girls are glad to hear that he's suffering, vowing to make me happy. It's going to be a rough road as a single mother, but I know I can make it through with my wonderful girls. I'll work hard to protect them and ensure they can do what they want to do. It's disgusting to think Kevin had an affair with a girl around the age of his daughter. But I love the way the children stick together, causing trouble for Kevin and his lover. I hope Sarah and her daughters continue to help each other and live as a happy family. We're dining in a fancy restaurant tonight, Eric declared triumphantly, claiming the reservation I had secured for Dad's celebration, much to the surprise of his in-laws. But a single-father household like yours isn't suited for fancy dining, he added, casting doubt on our ability to fit in. Despite his skepticism, I chose to confront Eric with a dose of reality. Do you realize this is my brother's place? I interjected. I'm Elizabeth, a 27-year-old office worker. My parents split when I was young, and Dad raised me single-handedly. Their divorce stemmed from Dad's workaholic nature, leaving Mom feeling neglected and ultimately reaching her breaking point. Tired of waiting, she finally said, "Set me free," tears streaming down her face. Dad, burdened with guilt, admitted fault, blaming himself for relying too heavily on her. Despite their split, Dad always prioritized me, never missing a school event or special occasion. He shielded me from insensitive comments about our single-parent household with his unwavering love. After the divorce, Mom and I maintained sporadic contact, but her remarriage and new family strained our relationship, leading to an awkward estrangement. Dad, on the other hand, took early retirement to focus on enjoying life. He'd sacrificed so much for me, and I wanted him to indulge in his passions. Then, 2 years ago, I married Eric, a man introduced by a friend. Dad approved of him wholeheartedly, and his in-laws welcomed me warmly. But when Eric suggested we move into his family home, I hesitated. Both my parents were aging, and the thought of being far from Dad worried me. He reassured me, insisting he was healthy enough to live independently. "Call me if anything happens," he urged, relinquishing any guilt I felt about leaving him. With his blessing, albeit reluctantly, I agreed to move in with Eric's family, knowing Dad would always be just a phone call away. However, just a few weeks after moving in, I began to regret my decision. Eric and his parents, whom I initially thought were kind, drastically changed their behavior towards me. They began treating me like a servant, assigning all the household chores, cooking, laundry, and cleaning, solely to me, while they did nothing. When I asked Eric for help, his response was dismissive. "I'm tired from work. Housework is a wife's job, right?" My protests about my own workload falling on deaf ears. "You married me, so you should be devoted to me and my parents," Eric would retort. Coming home exhausted from work only to face an endless list of chores was overwhelming. But it wasn't just the chores. Eric's mother, Mary, relentlessly tormented me. She'd purposefully spill food to dirty the floor or complain about the slightest speck of dust. "The spot is dirty, you know," she'd order me to clean. After telling me this, she'd leave dirty clothes all over for me to pick up. And after I washed and carefully folded them, she kicked them apart. Moreover, Mary often made disparaging remarks about me being from a single-father household. "You can't even do housework properly because you weren't raised in a proper family," she'd say. "How pitiful. It's amazing you can hold a job. The company must be blind to hire such a bottom-run woman. It's your dad's fault for the way he brought you up." Hearing such insults about Dad made me want to lash out. But the worst part was that John, my father-in-law, and Eric did nothing to intervene while they witnessed Mary's treatment of me. Far from supporting me, John looked at me scornfully, while Eric joined Mary in mocking me. "Mom's right, you lack any gratitude towards us. That's why she's cold to you," Eric sneered. "A woman from a dysfunctional family like yours would have been left on the shelf if I hadn't married you. You barely have any merits besides working and doing housework, so do them well. Don't even think of asking to share the chores. It's your role as a wife. And making excuses like being tired from work is absolutely unacceptable. I won't allow it," he dictated. When I tried to argue or refuse, Eric's mood turned visibly sour, and he began treating me as if I were invisible. "How dare you, as a wife, Make a fool of me, he would shout excessively. Then Mary chimed in, adding to the stress. Don't stress Eric when he's tired. Making things worse for me, she said. Some of the furniture in the in-laws' house was bought with my money. Coerced into purchasing them, I was abruptly taken to an electronics store and forced to buy under public pressure. Capitulating to avoid a scene, the harassment didn't end there. Even when I tried to visit my family for Christmas, they obstructed me. You're our wife now. Focus on our preparations. We need a feast and thorough cleaning done. Your dad's all alone? He won't do much, right? We have other relatives to entertain, they insisted. When I persisted in going home, they responded childishly, spilling juice on my packed clothes, hiding my shoes, and issuing daily complaints and harassment. Reluctantly, I gave up the idea of going back home, unable to reveal the truth. The in-laws' house is busy with Christmas preparations, so I'll stay in to help. Sorry, I can't make it back, I told Dad. Dad didn't blame me. Then it can't be helped. He gracefully accepted. Don't worry about it. It's busier there with more people. I can manage fine alone. So be it, he comforted me. Eric's ongoing tyranny made me seriously contemplate divorce, but I was troubled about how to tell Dad, who was purely happy about my marriage without hurting him. In the second year of this tumultuous marriage, Dad turned 60. I secretly made reservations at a renowned fancy restaurant for his celebration, anticipating complaints from Eric and his parents. I simply told them I had to return home briefly. They grumbled but reluctantly accepted when I promised it would just be for the day. Upon learning about the restaurant reservation, Dad was immensely delighted. I'm so blessed to have such a wonderful daughter. Thank you so much. Hearing Dad express gratitude made me incredibly happy. But I never imagined such an incident would unfold. As we entered the restaurant and informed the staff of our reservation, we were met with a shocking revelation. A reservation for two. There are 3 people claiming to be relatives already seated there, the staff informed us. Confused, I went to see the reserved table, only to find Eric and the in-laws seated there. Eric noticed me, sneering with a smug smile. Too bad you can't outsmart us and dine fancy just by yourselves, he said. The in-laws didn't even look our way, indulging in the feast they had presumably ordered for themselves. Dad, seeing Eric and the in-laws, looked back and forth between us, clearly bewildered. He had only seen the pleasant side of Eric and the in-laws, so his confusion was understandable. Eric, suspecting something from my cheerful demeanor about returning home, had sneakily snooped through my mobile phone. He learned about the 60th birthday celebration at the upscale restaurant and made it their first to preemptively order dishes. Eric began to mock us with a triumphant expression. People from poor, single-father households like you don't belong in fancy restaurants. Know your place. Let us savor the dishes here. Be grateful we're allowing you this much. You lot should go to some cheap pub. Despite the other customers' annoyed glances at Eric's loud voice, he remained oblivious, soaked in a sense of superiority. Next to Dad, he was dumbfounded by Eric's audacity. I was at my wits' end. I knew Eric and his family were selfish, but I never expected them to stoop to such shameless levels. My anger peaked as they ruined Dad's special 60th celebration. Suppressing my urge until Eric shouted, I calmly delivered a fact to him as he sat there smugly. This is my brother's place. He invited us here to celebrate Dad's birthday. At my words, the triumphant Eric and the disinterested in-laws froze. My brother, who had been listening to the entire conversation from the back of the restaurant, appeared with an extremely displeased look. He was taken by Mom during the divorce, but unlike our estranged mom, he has maintained and cherished his relationship with Dad and me. My brother owns the restaurant and was the one who suggested celebrating Dad's 60th birthday here. He hadn't attended the wedding due to work, but had seen the photos, so he recognized Eric. Initially, he thought Eric and the in-laws joining at the reserved table were part of celebrating with Dad. Seeing Eric mocking me and Dad, and the in-laws not correcting him, my brother was furious. How dare you speak to my sister and Dad like that? I regret being considerate just because you're Emily's family. Is this how you always treat her? I prepared this seat for my sister's wish to celebrate Dad, not for people who hijack it just for a free meal. We will celebrate Dad and my sister's occasion on another day. You'll be paying for what you ate. Eric and his party started making excuses, but my brother left them to the staff and took me and Dad outside. I'm sorry for letting such people into the restaurant and ruining the celebration. I'll make it up to you. He apologized to us. On the way home, I explained to Dad all the mistreatment from Eric and the in-laws. After listening silently, Dad said, "If you're unhappy in your marriage, there's no point. Don't worry about me. Come back home." So, I didn't return to the in-laws' house but went straight to my own home. Shortly after, my brother called to inform me about Eric and the in-laws. They had caused a scene over the bill but reluctantly paid when threatened with police involvement. Minutes later, Eric called. "Where are you? You've embarrassed us. Send the money we paid," he yelled. "Then I won't pay a penny. I'm done with you, and we'll be divorcing. I've gathered evidence of the bullying, so be prepared," I firmly replied. I had been collecting evidence of the harassment from Eric and the in-laws, which they never suspected. According to a lawyer I consulted, the forced purchases and other financial exploitations were enough to prove psychological abuse. Realizing I was serious about divorce, Eric panicked. No one but me would marry a woman from a single-father household. "Do you want to upset Dad?" he threatened. I scoffed. "Dad said my happiness matters most. I'd rather be with him than care for the likes of you," I replied. Still, Eric warned, "You'll regret this. Think it over." But I hung up and proceeded with the divorce preparations. Eventually, Eric and I divorced. He was reluctant due to societal image, but finally gave in as we neared court. I secured substantial evidence of psychological abuse, ensuring I received a fair settlement in the divorce. Additionally, during the property distribution, I took the furniture I had purchased for the in-laws' house, having the legal right as the buyer. The in-laws tried to complain, but my lawyer simply stated the purchaser naturally has the right of possession, leaving them defeated. A few months after returning to my parents' home, Eric reached out wanting to reconcile. Apparently, on the day that triggered our divorce at the restaurant, Eric's boss and colleagues were there for a work celebration. They heard everything he said to me and Dad. Eric's boss, who had struggled growing up in a single-parent home, was disappointed in Eric's disparaging remarks about single-father households. Eric lost his standing and any chance of advancement at work. Moreover, his colleagues had spread the story, and he was now regarded with contempt at work. The problems didn't stop at the company. The in-laws' house became chaotic too. Before our divorce, Eric and the in-laws had offloaded all household chores on me, and post-divorce, the in-laws entrenched in laziness, bickering over who should do the chores. Eric was being pressured by the in-laws to buy new furniture to replace what I took and to contribute more financially. I was wrong, Elizabeth. I took advantage of your kindness too much. I've truly reflected and want to start over. Eric pleaded for reconciliation, but my feelings had cooled significantly. He likely faced more pressure to do chores at the in-laws' house and wanted me back to resume my role as a housekeeper. Perhaps he was also trying to offload some of the financial demands from the in-laws onto me, so I firmly rejected his proposal. No way. I wouldn't get back with you even if you paid me. I can see you changing back and exploiting me again once we're married. I was foolish not to divorce you sooner without worrying about Dad. Then perhaps Dad's 60th wouldn't have been ruined. We're divorced now, strangers. If you contact me again, I'll consult my lawyer. I hung up the phone. Perhaps my mention of a lawyer resonated because I received no further reconciliation attempts from Eric. Now I'm living happily at home with Dad, and my brother occasionally visits, bringing gifts. His wife is pregnant, and he seems truly happy. Dad and I are both looking forward to the baby. While I'm not considering marriage anytime soon, if the opportunity arises, I'll be sure to choose more wisely. You thought you could marry my son. The father-in-law's words cut through the air, chilly and stern. Our standards don't align with yours. he continued, disdain lacing his tone. Don't you dare dream of joining us. Anyway, you're not the right person for my son. Now, leave, he commanded, his voice unwavering. That's how coldly my father-in-law spoke to me, and my mother-in-law chimed in as well. You wouldn't have approached Alex for money anyway, she added, her disapproval palpable. My name is Kate. I'm 34 years old, and I work for a company. Since graduating from university, I've remained with the same company, dedicating myself to my work every day. Some of my coworkers left to start their own businesses, get married, or have children. Despite this, I stayed, committed to my career. You might think I'm a lonely workaholic woman, but I'm not. I have a boyfriend named Alex. Alex was a business partner. Initially, I thought of him as a nice young man who took his work seriously. As we collaborated more, we began to develop feelings for each other. He confessed his feelings, and we started dating. It's been a few years since we started dating, and now we're even engaged. But if you ask me if I'm worried about marrying him, I have to admit there are some concerns. He's still young, even younger than me. I wonder if he'll be okay with me being older. Though he says age doesn't matter, I can't shake off my worries. His father is a business owner, and Alex works for his father's company. This means that in the future, Alex will take over the company and become its president. I fear his parents will oppose our marriage. I've been feeling uneasy about it for a long time. Of course, I was happy when he asked me to marry him, but I wonder if we can really tie the knot. However, Alex doesn't seem to mind at all. His optimism is one of the things I find attractive about him. He's already met my parents, and we often have nice dinners together. My parents have agreed that we are getting married, and they like Alex very much. Finally, the day came to meet Alex's parents. For weeks, I had been nervous about the visit. Their house was spectacular, as expected for the president of the company. It was a grand mansion that made me feel like I was in a royal palace or something. Instantly, I began to wonder if my clothes were appropriate for the occasion. I had prepared some fine clothes, but I wasn't sure if they were good enough. I come from a modest family, and it would be a world of difference compared to Alex's house. Alex often treats me to nice meals at fancy restaurants, and when we go on vacation, he always books expensive hotel rooms. He thinks such things are completely normal, but sometimes I feel like he lives in a different world from me. Even so, he never imposes his values on me, and he never brags about being wealthy. I don't judge people by their money. I fell in love with him because of his personality and inner beauty. Initially, I questioned why he was dating an older, attractive woman like me. But his sweet words reassured me that he genuinely appreciated me for who I am. In other words, because we love each other for who we are on the inside, Alex and I are getting married. I believe I've met a truly wonderful man, so I want his parents to approve of our union. Don't worry, babe. I've already told my parents about you. He tried to encourage me. Then the front door opened, and his mother welcomed us. Welcome, you must be Kate. Yes, I'm Kate. Nice to meet you. I replied as his mother gave me a quick nod and ushered us in. Inside, there was a vast living room, and Alex's father was waiting for us, seated on a luxurious, fluffy sofa. I suddenly felt nervous all at once. Of course, I was nervous when I met his mother, but his father was even more intimidating, as one would expect from the president of a company. It is a pleasure to finally meet you. My name is Kate. Thank you for inviting us today. I managed to say, my voice slightly trembling. Alex looked at me and smiled. Don't be so nervous. But his parents weren't smiling at all. Instead, they stared at me with icy eyes, sending a shiver down my spine. Please sit down, his father instructed, gesturing to the sofa. It felt like a job interview. Well, no, excuse me, his father interjected the moment I sat down. His mother followed suit. Hey, Mom, Dad, what are you guys doing? What do you mean no? It's rude to say such a thing. Alex was upset and tried to defend me, but his parents didn't seem to listen. How old are you anyway? You look pretty old to me, his mother remarked. I'm 34, I replied, feeling a knot form in my stomach. I'm only 6 years older than Alex. How can we accept Alex marrying an older woman like you? She continued. Besides, it's already too late for you to have children, isn't it? We need someone who can give us grandchildren. And for me, it has to be a young woman, at least younger than Alex, his mother added, her words cutting through me like a knife. I knew they would bring up my age. And you're still single at your age. I can't help but think you have some kind of problem. Maybe you're too difficult or have a bad personality, something like that. His mother concluded, her tone harsh and judgmental. Mom, what are you talking about? Kate is a wonderful person with a great personality, Alex interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. But then why hasn't she married before? His mother's sharp question exploded into the room. Excuse me, I responded, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. I know I'm a little older to be married, but I love my job, and I wanted to work harder. I've always prioritized my career over marriage. That's why I didn't get married until I reached this age. It wasn't until I met Alex that I realized I wanted to get married. I tried my best to explain, feeling the pressure mounting from his parents. But their attitudes remained unchanged. Wouldn't working harder be more beneficial? It's not like the company you work for is a big one. Even if you work hard and get promoted, you don't get paid much, do you? His father questioned, his tone dismissive. I think you should focus more on making yourself more attractive as a woman. You know, it would be nice if you got. His mother paused, searching for words. Yes, even at your age, you can still look a little better. Maybe some plastic surgery would help, she suggested, her words cutting through the air. Honey, that's too straightforward, his father chided. But they both laughed, seemingly amused by their own remarks. It was the first time I saw them laugh, but it was at our expense. I was shocked and angry, unsure of how to respond. You thought you could marry my son. Your standards don't match ours. Don't you dare dream of joining us. Anyway, the point is, you were not the right person for my son. Now, leave. His father's words were cold and cutting. That's how coldly my father-in-law spoke to me, and my mother-in-law got in on the act too. I recounted, feeling a surge of frustration. You would have approached Alex for money anyway. I don't know how you fooled my son, but you can't fool us too. That's enough, his mother added, her tone accusatory. You guys can say whatever the hell you want, but it's my life. I'm gonna decide who I'm marrying. Alex attempted to defend me, but I stopped him, placing a hand on his arm. I see. I understand how you feel, but it's quite impolite of you to say such horrible things to me, I said, trying to maintain composure despite the hurtful words. Despite the fact that we just met, I don't care if you were richer or not. It's not important to me. But if I were to become rich, I definitely do not want to be like you, I asserted, standing up abruptly. We wouldn't have to have any more conversations, I added as I made my way to leave his parents' house. You've got to be kidding me. Don't you dare insult us, you beggar. We will never allow you to marry my son. I don't want to be related to people like you anyway, his father retorted angrily as I walked out. You're such a disgraceful person. I'd like to see the face of the parents who've raised a woman like you, he continued, his words stinging with disdain. Ignoring his father's tirade, I left the house in frustration, leaving my parents behind. Their attitude was just too much to bear. Outside, Alex came running up to me in a panic. Kate, I'm sorry. I never thought my parents would say something like that. I mean, it was a horrible thing to say, but maybe it's a good thing. It would have been a lot more pressured if we got married in that situation. Anyway, I'm leaving them. I'm not taking over Dad's company. I'm quitting that company too. You shouldn't make such a decision in a rush, I cautioned, feeling conflicted. I'm not. I really do love you, Kate. We didn't get together for money, so there should be no problem if I leave the house, he reassured me earnestly. Well, that's true, but I began, uncertain. Let's go to your parents' house and tell them about this, he interrupted, taking my hand and leading me away. My parents were surprised at our sudden visit, but welcomed us warmly. Over tea, we recounted what had happened. My father listened without saying a word until Alex mentioned his father's company. Alex, your father's company is called Space Sea, right? And your father's name is Patrick Smith? Yes, but why? Alex replied, puzzled. That's what I thought. I see. Why don't we go with you to your parents' house now? My father suggested cryptically. Dad, what's going on? I asked, bewildered. Because they said they wanted to see her face, right? Let's go show a face then, shall we? My father declared, surprising me with his resolve. My father wasn't the type to provoke or anything like that, so I was taken aback, but he seemed determined, leaving us no choice. We ended up going to his parents' house again, this time with my father leading the way. When Alex's father answered the door, not his mother, the tension was palpable. You again. I won't forgive you, no matter how many times you come back, Alex's father began, his tone icy. Whose daughter do you think you were talking to, Patrick? My father interjected, his voice calm but firm. It took Alex's father a few seconds to finally recognize something, and the atmosphere shifted as realization dawned upon him. Mr. Anderson, is that you? You finally remembered your daughter. That means her father is you, my father declared as he confronted Alex's father. That's right. She's my only daughter. We had her later in our marriage, Alex's father admitted. How dare you insult my precious daughter? Have you forgotten what I told you back then for 3 years? No, you see. When you were arrested for smoking, drinking, and even caught shoplifting, I covered for you and gave you a chance to become a better person, didn't I? I did all that I could so that you could get a decent job. Didn't I teach you that no one can live alone and we all support each other? And yet, as soon as your company is successful, you forget all that, haven't you? My father continued, his voice filled with disappointment and frustration. I apologize for that, Alex's father said, bowing his head to me, acknowledging his wrongdoing. Alex's father seemed to be fragile now, a complete change from what he was before. If you're going to be the president of a company, you need to treat people with compassion. You think you're better than others because you're successful, aren't you? Aren't you looking down on people when you shouldn't? My father admonished, trying to impart some wisdom. Just when I thought you'd finally come to your senses, you're back to your old self. You're a real pain in the ass. You know that, Patrick. My father scolded, his frustration evident. Honey, you should apologize to her as well. Alex's mother interjected, bowing her head to me as well. I felt relieved that Alex's parents apologized to me, though the tension in the room was still palpable. I'm leaving this house, and I'm leaving the company too, Alex announced suddenly, causing panic among his parents. Wait a minute, if you leave, who's going to take over your father's role? You're the only one we have left, his father protested. I'm sick of you controlling me over everything. I'm going to start my own company and see how far I can go on my own. And I'll marry Kate as I promised. Thanks for everything, Alex declared, bowing his head to say goodbye to his parents. They froze up, turning pale, as we left them behind. It was then that I learned Alex's father was one of my father's students during high school. After Alex quit his job and started his own business, I continued working, supporting him as he pursued his entrepreneurial dreams. Alex proved to be talented as a business owner, and his company began making profits at an early stage. Eventually, we got married and became husband and wife, living with joy every day, supporting each other through thick and thin. As for my father-in-law, he faced consequences for his behavior, as some of his subordinates sued him for power harassment. His dismissal from his position as president taught us the importance of humility and compassion, no matter how successful one becomes. I have my father as a role model, and I cherish everything he taught me, striving to live my life with dignity and gratitude. Prepare the bath with hot water, was the request from my husband, who had vanished 3 years ago. When he unexpectedly called me for the first time in ages, he had left me abruptly, leaving behind divorce papers, and eloped with his mistress. The pain I felt that day 3 years ago was immeasurable. I couldn't fathom the audacity of his call now, but I've changed since then. I understand, I replied calmly, suppressing my anger as I hung up the phone. I couldn't help but wonder what my husband would be like when he returned home. I hoped he would feel the same pain I did back then. Suck it up, I thought to myself. My name is Mary, 30 years old with an office job. I met my husband Dean through a social networking site. It all began when I discovered Dean was organizing a meetup for fans of my favorite band. Being unfamiliar with anyone who shared my passion for this less-known band, I reached out to him. The meetup venue was conveniently close to my house, so I impulsively messaged Dean. He responded politely, providing directions. Dean, as the moderator, ensured the event was lively, making me feel at ease amidst strangers. Though nervous, Dean's presence made the meetup enjoyable. We clicked instantly, realizing we shared similar tastes not only in music, but also in other aspects. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and I found myself drawn to him. After parting ways with others, Dean and I continued talking as we traveled on the same train. We discovered numerous commonalities, and I felt a burgeoning affection for him. Agreeing to meet again, I left the train, eagerly anticipating our next encounter. Our messages grew frequent, and a month later, at a concert, Dean confessed his feelings. I blushed with surprise and joy, thinking my affection for him had been one-sided. Every day since then, being with Dean has brought me nothing but happiness. Dean is an incredibly considerate person, always careful not to say anything hurtful. Countless times, he surprised me with gestures that brought tears to my eyes because his priority was my happiness. I felt like I could do anything for Dean in return. After a year of dating, we decided to tie the knot. His proposal took me completely by surprise. During a dinner at a restaurant, he suddenly presented me with a lavish bouquet of flowers, and as I accepted, our mutual friends emerged to share their congratulations. It was a moment of pure joy, and I couldn't help but cry tears of happiness. Even after marriage, Dean and I maintain a romance, seemingly unaffected by the change in status. Despite his demanding job, Dean actively participated in household chores and made grand gestures for our wedding anniversaries and birthdays. I was grateful every day to be married to such an amazing man. However, after 2 years of wedded bliss, Dean began to exhibit strange behavior. While he had always been busy with work, his workload seemed to escalate. He started working overtime, even on holidays, and traveled more frequently than before. There were days when I hardly saw him, and nights when he returned home long after I had fallen asleep waiting for him. One night, out of concern for his health, I suggested he take some time off from work. His response was unexpectedly cold, the first time he had ever spoken to me in such a manner. It was then that I realized something had changed in him. Dean's transformation became more evident over time. One morning, he scolded me for not having breakfast ready at an ungodly hour, displaying an unreasonable level of anger. It was bewildering and hurtful, especially considering I had never imagined he would even think to be upset about such a thing. I, too, have a job, and naturally, the housework isn't always perfect. I was so stunned by Dean's reaction that I zoned out for a while. Perhaps I shouldn't be so engrossed in my work. I realized I needed to put more effort in the household chores and wait for Dean to settle down at work, hoping he would return to his former gentle self. I firmly believed that one day he would, so I did everything in my power to make our home a peaceful sanctuary for his return. But despite my efforts, Dean continued to give me the cold shoulder. Even though my heart felt like it was breaking, I persevered, trying my best to maintain the household. One day, while checking Dean's pockets for items to take to the cleaners, I discovered a pair of women's earrings, obviously not mine. The moment I laid eyes on them, I became convinced that all of Dean's previous actions had been a facade. He wasn't busy with work, he was meeting his affair partner. That explained why he was never home. Feeling foolish and utterly miserable for caring so deeply about Dean, I stayed up that night, waiting for his return. When he finally arrived in the morning, I confronted him about the earrings. "Whose earrings are these?" "They were in your suit pocket." I tried to keep a calm tone, hoping for a rational discussion, but Dean's response was nonchalant. "Oh, they belong to my girlfriend. Thanks, I'll return them tomorrow." His indifference stunned me. There was no hint of remorse or panic, as if having an affair was normal. Unable to contain my emotions, I accused him sharply. "You're not even going to apologize, or acknowledge that you're doing something wrong? We're married, aren't we?" Dean's retort was swift and cunning. "Shut up. You're the cause of this mess." As he stormed towards the bathroom, I realized I hadn't heated the water in the tub, a detail no wife would prioritize during such a confrontation. But Dean's accusation echoed in my mind. "Why haven't you heated up the water? Can't you even do that?" I was at a loss. He showed no intention of discussing or ending the affair. There were so many words I wanted to say, but they seemed futile. Unable to muster a response, all I could do was cry. In silence, I retreated to the bedroom, tears streaming down my face. Morning came, and Dean was nowhere to be found. Had he left in anger? Stunned, I returned to the living room, where I discovered something shocking on the table. There it was, a divorce document signed by Dean, accompanied by a short letter that simply read, "Goodbye. Sign these and send them out." I frantically tried to reach Dean, but he refused to answer my calls, leaving me unable to contact him. Could a couple really end things so abruptly? Was it fair for me to place blame on him that day? I took time off work and reached out to my in-laws, but even they couldn't get through to Dean. None of our mutual friends had any luck reaching him either. To my surprise, I discovered that he had resigned from his job 2 weeks prior. In hindsight, it seemed too coincidental for divorce papers to be prepared in the dead of night. This had been planned. Life after that became a blur. I no longer found solace in the songs of my favorite band, and work became an impossibility as I took a leave of absence. Emotional wounds festered, imprisoning me within the confines of my own home for months. Concerned for my well-being, my mother came to stay with me for a while. 3 years passed before I could even fathom returning to a semblance of normalcy. Perhaps, just maybe, I could begin moving forward again. And then, as I was beginning to entertain this notion, the phone rang one evening while I was cooking dinner at home. An unknown number flashed on the screen, filling me with apprehension as I answered. To my disbelief, it was Dean's voice on the other end, a voice I never expected to hear again. My heart raced with shock. And there he was, on the phone, uttering those words. "I'll be back tomorrow. Get the hot water ready in the bath." I couldn't comprehend it. Had he forgotten everything that happened 3 years ago? How could he return and face me after all this time? The confusion and hurt swirled inside me, but instead of voicing my myriad of thoughts, I simply replied, "I understand," before hanging up the phone. The following day, Dean called again, his voice laden with fury. "What happened to our house? It's still our house, right? Explain this to me," he demanded. But I was bewildered. "Our house? That's my house," I retorted. Dean's anger flared even more. "You forgot to boil the water in the bath too?" he accused, unleashing his frustration on me. "You're not my husband anymore, Dean," I asserted firmly, feeling the weight of those words. Turning around, Dean caught sight of me, my in-laws, and my lawyer. Panic flickered across his face as he lost his grip on the phone. "Why are Mom and Dad here?" he stammered, attempting to flee, but my in-laws and the lawyer closed in around him, leading him towards the lawyer's office. Ignoring his protests, we made our way to the office, where Dean was seated. "Here are the documents regarding alimony," the lawyer stated matter-of-factly, despite Dean's protests about not having the money. In a fit of rage, Dean tore up the papers, but the lawyer produced more copies, prepared for such defiance. "You should pay alimony to Mary for cheating on her and causing her emotional distress," the lawyer asserted sternly, fixing Dean with a cold glare. Dean attempted to deflect. "Let's just move on with our lives. What about the house?" But the lawyer remained resolute. "Mary's heartbreak cannot be mended with money, but it's the least you can do." Dean's attention shifted to me and my in-laws. The house is mine. Have you forgotten everything after 3 years? I don't want the house we shared anymore, he declared bitterly. So, I made the decision to tear it down and turn it into a parking lot, Dean declared, referring to the house where we once lived together. Originally, the property belonged to my parents, who had passed it down to Dean and me, though it was in my name. You got it from your parents, so it should be in your name, Dean stated, conveniently forgetting that detail. But I wasn't about to let him off the hook. I don't remember you having any ownership claim, I shot back, refusing to be swayed by his demands. Dean persisted. If you're going to turn it into a parking lot, you better split some of that revenue with me, right? I couldn't help but scoff at his audacity. How long are you going to keep up this charade? What you did is unforgivable, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. You're 30 years old and still don't realize it. You're a good-for-nothing, I added, feeling a surge of anger and frustration. My father-in-law intervened, delivering a verdict on Dean's behalf. You're right. The only thing left for you to do is pay alimony and disappear from our lives, he declared, his tone unwavering. As I watched Dean's crestfallen expression, I couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction. There's no way we're starting over, I asserted firmly. You served me those divorce papers, remember? Besides, I'm already remarried, I declared, introducing my lawyer and now husband Jude. Dean was visibly shaken by the revelation, his demeanor shifting from defiance to despair. Don't say that, Mary. I'm sorry, let's start over, he pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. But I stood my ground. It's too late for that, I replied, my resolve unwavering. Just sign the papers and leave. With a defeated sigh, Dean begrudgingly complied, signing the documents as instructed. Can we please just split it up? He pleaded, his voice strained with desperation. But my father-in-law remained resolute. No one is doing you any favors. Make sure you pay her on time, he admonished sternly. With that, Dean hastily gathered his belongings and fled from the office, leaving behind a palpable sense of relief in his wake. My in-laws apologized profusely for his behavior, and Jude assured me that he would ensure Dean paid his alimony promptly. True to his word, Jude navigated the legal process with finesse, ensuring Dean paid a lump sum as alimony. According to Jude, Dean had no savings and was scraping by with a day job. It turned out that he had been living lavishly off a wealthy woman, but she eventually grew tired of him and kicked him out. With the alimony settled, I cut off all communication with Dean, focusing instead on enjoying my honeymoon with Jude. He never complained about my imperfect housework, always offering his support and understanding. Together, we found joy in the simple pleasures of life, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly content. As we embark on this new chapter together, I find solace in the fact that I am no longer bound by the chains of the past. With Jude by my side, I can finally embrace the future with optimism and hope. And for that, I am eternally grateful. My name is Katie, and I'm 37 years old. Last year, I married my husband Steve, and together, we purchased a house. Steve is a decade younger than me, a fact that I never imagined when thinking about marriage. Initially, as we began dating, I anticipated that we might eventually part ways. However, to my surprise, our relationship swiftly led to marriage. When Steve proposed, I even questioned if he was truly ready to marry me. His response, reassuring me of his commitment to protecting me, filled me with gratitude for his kindness. Despite our joy in becoming newlyweds, we faced challenges. We longed for moments alone together, but they were scarce. Steve's mother, Lily, vehemently opposed our union, fearing her son's departure. She disapproved, particularly disconcerted by the age gap between Steve and me. This opposition led Lily to set a condition for her acceptance. We must live with her. Though I found this demand excessive, we reluctantly agreed, understanding Steve's inability to defy his mother. My own upbringing instilled in me a sense of duty towards parental figures, so I felt compelled to reciprocate Lily's care. Despite my desire to foster a harmonious relationship with her, Lily's disapproval persisted. Hoping to change her perception, we moved into the home we purchased, aiming to demonstrate our commitment to each other and gain her approval. However, our optimism proved misplaced. Lily's criticism of me only intensified, focusing on trivial matters like household chores. Despite my efforts to explain my workload, she dismissed my explanations, asserting her authority over me. Any attempt to challenge her only fueled her hostility towards me. Steve, witnessing his mother's mistreatment of me, intervened, defending me from her verbal assaults. Lily, taken aback by Steve's defiance, attributed his change in behavior to my influence, blaming me for his supposed rebellion against her. While saying this, she would wipe her tears with a tissue, her cold, angry glare piercing through me. "This is all your fault," she'd say. "I don't know why Steve got married to a woman like you." It happened every single time, making me feel like I was living a life straight out of a soap opera where wives are incessantly picked on by their mother-in-laws. Lily seemed frustrated that her beloved Steve was taken away by a wife much older than him, and it seemed like she enjoyed bullying me as if it were her hobby. Day by day, Lily became more spoiled and out of control. I found myself having to care for her like a grandmother, despite having no experience in such matters, making it a challenge. "Katie, I'm sorry about this," I'd say, to which she'd reply, "It's okay. Thank you for always being there for me." I couldn't help but feel sorry for Steve. His own mother hated and continually bullied the woman he loved. Though he tried many times to get her to move out, I couldn't agree to his idea. I felt a sense of pity for Lily, believing that if I endured her behavior, she might one day understand and change for the better. That's what I believed. But Lily's verbal abuse towards me persisted. On the first New Year's Day after our marriage, we gathered at a relative's house. Lily, who usually never left the house, was unusually happy to see and talk with people, her excited mood evident to everyone. Every day, Katie makes excuses that she has work, but in reality, she doesn't do anything at all. Lily exclaimed, airing her grievances to our relatives. "Can you believe that? If she did that during our generation, it would be unacceptable, right? I really don't know where she got her common sense." She continued to speak ill of me, even in the presence of our relatives, her voice reaching me in the kitchen where I stood. One of my husband's relatives, Lisa, who was with me, expressed concern, noting my apparent distress. "Katie, it looks like you're having a hard time, aren't you?" Lisa asked, her expression filled with worry. I couldn't help but acknowledge the truth. Living with Lily is not a comforting experience, isn't it? I admitted, feeling the weight of the situation. Lisa nodded sympathetically, especially with Lily being like that. Feeling a sense of relief and confiding my true feelings, I responded, "Well, actually, you're right." Then, without hesitation, I asked, "Why don't you talk to Helen about it?" Helen is Steve's aunt and Lily's sister, an older sibling known for her kindness and reliability. But would she even listen to me complaining about her own sister? I wondered to myself. "Katie." I heard a loud voice echoing through the kitchen. Lily was clearly in the wrong now. "You always make me keep asking you to bring me more drinks because we're out of it." "Sorry, I'll bring it out now," I sighed, hurrying to fetch the beer. Lily was in the midst of chatting with her relatives and seemed a bit intoxicated. As I handed her a cold bottle of beer and a new glass, Lily snatched it away from me. "Katie, you really are a clumsy wife, aren't you?" she remarked, glaring at me. Why would she say that? I thought to myself, as Lily poured the beer into the glass for a relative sitting next to her. I couldn't help but notice her hypocrisy. Pouring drinks into empty glasses was common sense, wasn't it? "This is what you always lack, Katie. You're really a useless person with a bad upbringing." Lily's words made everyone around uncomfortable. But she seemed indifferent. Feeling that getting angry at Lily would only escalate the situation, I decided to casually laugh it off. "That's my mother-in-law. She really knows her way around drinks." "I learn a lot from you, Lily," I remarked with my usual business smile. Lily also smiled, seemingly satisfied with herself. "Katie, are you all right?" It was Lily's sister, Helen, who spoke to me, clearly concerned by my exhaustion. I'm really sorry about my sister. It's always so difficult to deal with her, isn't it? Helen empathized. Oh, no. I denied that I was fed up with Lily and couldn't manage to lie convincingly in front of Helen. Living together with Lily, is it difficult? It actually is. Lily doesn't seem to like me at all, I confessed, venting my frustrations to Helen. Helen listened attentively to every word I said and finally offered, "If you have any problems, you can always talk to me." Her kind and reassuring words touched me deeply, making me feel as though she were like a real mother to me. Yes, I have a kind ally who will help me when I'm really in trouble, I thought, feeling a bit better as I carried on with the New Year's holiday. Thank you. And I'm sorry for what happened, Katie. Helen apologized on behalf of her mother. Oh, it's okay. Lily was drunk, and because of that, I'm sure she just got carried away. I tried to rationalize, though deep down, I knew I was being too naive about Lily's behavior. Her verbal abuse toward me persisted, despite my efforts not to argue back. The family events hosted by Steve's relatives were frequent, and every time, I found myself forcefully sent out by Lily to assist. Although Steve assured me that I didn't have to attend if I was busy, Lily's insistence always prevailed, and each time I endured verbal abuse from her. Katie, don't get carried away just because you have a job, Lily would admonish. A wife should always stand 3 steps behind her husband and quietly watch over him. You think you're equal with Steve, but he's a better man than you. You don't understand anything. Her public verbal assaults in front of my relatives became routine, leaving me feeling humiliated and powerless. Steve attempted to intervene, but I felt too uncomfortable to draw further attention to the situation during these lively gatherings. Then, one day at a family gathering, Lily uttered something so cruel that I reached my breaking point. Amidst the usual banter and drinks, Lily's words cut deep. "What does my son even see in Katie?" Lily remarked casually. "I really shouldn't have allowed him to marry her. She can't even get pregnant, so what's the point of their marriage? Don't you think so?" She sought agreement from those around her, her tone dripping with disdain. The air grew tense as Steve's hand trembled, and I accidentally dropped the tray I was holding. "What'd you just say, Mother?" Steve's voice was low, his anger barely contained. "I only said, if she can't get pregnant. What's the point of your marriage with Katie?" Lily defended, oblivious to the hurtful implications of her words. "Marriage at 37 means she's given up on getting pregnant, right? That's why I was against the marriage, but you wouldn't listen to me. It's too late to regret anything." I wondered if Lily truly grasped the gravity of her words. Steve and I did want children, and though my chances were slim at nearly 40, I had begun fertility treatments without informing Lily. I knew revealing this would only invite more criticism. "Hey, Katie, let's make this clear once and for all," Lily continued callously. "If you don't want to have kids, then get divorced already. Steve is still young, so he can start over as much as he wants." Okay. At that moment, something inside me snapped. The wiring that I had worked so hard to endure all this time had snapped with the words kids and divorce. "You really hate me, don't you, Lily?" I finally confronted her. "Yes, I do hate you," Lily responded, looking at me with a twisted smile. "Okay then. Well, just now, we are no longer living together anymore. Could you please leave my house, Lily?" I demanded firmly. "What are you talking about? You're crazy," Lily scoffed, trying to dismiss my words as a joke in front of our relatives. "I'm sorry, but I'm not joking at all. You cannot stay in our house any longer," I insisted, my resolve unwavering. Sensing the shift in the atmosphere, all the relatives instantly moved away from us, giving us space. "What are you talking about? If you hate me so much, then why are you living in our house? You have no right to demand me to leave," Lily retorted, visibly shocked. "Oh yes, I do. That house is mine. It is up to me whether I let you live there or kick you out, Lily," I asserted. Lily turned to Steve, seeking his support. "Wait a minute, Steve. What's the meaning of all this?" she pleaded. "Mom, I told you many times, didn't I? Don't make fun of Katie too much. Steve responded coldly. I told you that Katie built that house by herself, didn't I? Why can't you even remember something so important? Because normally, it should be the husband who builds the house, right? Lily retorted, revealing her outdated beliefs. Steve sighed in frustration. I was against moving in with you, Mother, but Katie insisted on having you live with us, so I had no choice. So that's enough. If you make fun of my wife anymore, even if you're my own mother, I will not allow it. With tears in her eyes, Lily argued back, Excuse me? No way. You're kidding, right, Steve? Aren't you on my side? Your side? I'm more like your enemy, Mother. I can't believe that you're my own mother who verbally abuses my beloved wife like this. Steve retorted, his tone heavy with disappointment. Oh, Steve, why? Lily burst into tears, clinging desperately to Steve, but it was already too late. Anyways, please pack your bags by the end of this week. I interjected firmly, meeting Lily's gaze with resolve. No way, Katie. Please, wait a minute. I apologize for everything I've done. Let's continue to live happily together, okay? Lily pleaded, trying to brush off the situation, as if nothing had happened. I can't do that. I can't live any longer with someone who doesn't have a shred of gratitude. Please stay away from me and get out of my house as soon as possible. I am the landlord here, I stated, unyielding. Mother, it is what it is. So get ready to leave. We won't help you, Steve added, his tone final. Lily heard her son and his wife's demand for her to leave the house, all in front of her relatives. Few people sympathized with her because everyone knew what she had been saying all along. Katie, good job. Steve's Aunt Helen approached us afterward, offering her support. Actually, this whole idea was Helen's. We have to teach my sister a lesson. Katie, you did a good job. Steve, you have to protect your wife. Auntie, thank you for helping me save Katie. Steve expressed his gratitude. Helena and I had actually been in touch with each other frequently. Whenever I couldn't stand Lily's abuse, I would always consult Helen about it. She always supported me gently. It's okay. Don't you worry about such things. I will be monitoring Lily from now on. So you both should just think about living your lives first. Helen reassured us. After that, I asked Lily to leave our house as planned. Helen was the one who strictly got angry at Lily, although she resisted to the very end. This is what you did to yourself. Why don't you reflect on all the things you've said that hurt people's feelings? Helen scolded Lily before taking her away. After Lily was kicked out of our house, she began living alone. We'd also moved out of our home. Steve had just been transferred, and I had just submitted my transfer request. The house was originally built with my parents' inheritance, so there was no mortgage, making it easy to sell. We made some money after selling the house, which made life a little more comfortable. If Lily were to visit our previous home, she would surely feel lonely and hopeless. We knew this and chose to part ways. I'm home, Steve announced as he entered the door. Welcome home, honey, I greeted him, rubbing my big stomach. I'm looking forward to our baby. I'm finally becoming a father, Steve exclaimed with joy. I'm counting on you, sweetie. Soon, we will be parents, I replied, feeling grateful for Steve's unwavering support. Steve was determined to protect me, even if he had to cut ties off from his own mother. No matter what happens, we can get through it as a couple. I'm so glad that I married him. I believe that with all my heart. After contemplating the $3 million inheritance, I made a significant choice to split it between my mother and myself. This decision arose shortly after my father's funeral. While perusing the inheritance documents, Jack, without seeking permission, cautioned me against being too greedy. Thoughts raced through my mind. Now I could finally leave my job. Gratitude towards my deceased father flooded my thoughts, albeit tinged with frustration at his hesitance. Ignoring my confusion, I blurted out a retort, inadvertently revealing Jack's jab at my father. Amidst discussions between Jack and my mother-in-law about purchasing a new car and indulging in shopping sprees, I struggled to contain my emotions. The unexpected turn of events left me reeling. Overwhelmed, I dared to request financial assistance with household chores, only to be met with insults directed at my father. Living with Jack and my mother-in-law seemed unbearable at that moment. Suppressing my anger, I forced a smile and acquiesced to their plans. I am Kelly Cohan, a 38-year-old housewife, and I work alongside my husband. My parents, both doctors, ran a reputable clinic in our hometown. As an only child, I was showered with love. Despite their initial disappointment at my career choice in pharmacy, they respected my decision. Tragedy struck when my mother passed away unexpectedly in an accident, leaving me and my father devastated. During those dark times, Jack, then my boyfriend, provided unwavering support. Despite being an ordinary salaryman in the food and beverage industry, I believed our love could conquer any obstacle. My father's approval of our relationship filled me with joy. However, during a visit to Jack's family home to announce our engagement, his mother's disparaging remarks about me being an older and plain choice for Jack stung. Jack's swift defense of my character focused more on financial stability than on my qualities. His mother's approval hinged on this revelation. Despite the rocky start, Jack was overjoyed after gaining his mother's acceptance of our marriage. However, despite the smooth path towards our decision to marry, a lingering sense of unease nagged at me. As we prepared to register our marriage, my father, a doctor and real estate investor, surprised me with an apartment in a luxury building in New York City. I excitedly shared the news with Jack, emphasizing that this was not just a gift from my father, but our new home where we could build a life together in happiness and peace. Jack's delighted smile marked the beginning of our married life. Yet, once married, I began to notice unsettling patterns. Jack, who had lived with his parents until then, seemed almost incapable of household chores. Cooking, operating the washing machine, or even basic cleanliness eluded him. Despite my desire to share responsibilities evenly, Jack's indifference only fueled my dissatisfaction. In our first year of marriage, I shouldered the burden alone, excusing it as part of the honeymoon phase. However, by the second year, overwhelmed by work and household duties, I reached a breaking point. Summoning courage, I confronted Jack about sharing responsibilities, only to be met with dismissive responses. He claimed fatigue from work and admitted to being inept at chores, leaving me to handle them without gratitude or reflection. Despite my efforts, Jack hardly lifted a finger around the house, leaving me to bear the brunt of the workload. But that wasn't the only challenge. Marrying Jack also brought to light his mother's peculiar expectations. Attempting to honor her on Mother's Day with a quality scarf and carnations, I faced her disapproval. She criticized the gift, deeming it unworthy of her standards. Despite my attempts to explain, she remained adamant, insisting on items from renowned luxury brands. Disheartened, I confided in Jack, hoping for support. Instead, he brushed off her demands, instructing me to comply. Consequently, we began offering her cash as she demanded, further straining our relationship. Moreover, as our 5th year of marriage approached, my mother-in-law's visits became more frequent, often coinciding with requests for money. Despite my job, Jack's modest income strained our finances, leaving us barely afloat. Desperation drove me to dip into our savings to ease the burden, even though I harbored frustrations. Yet, understanding Jack's bond with his mother, I persevered, reminding myself of her support during difficult times. In our 8th year of marriage, little had changed. I continued to shoulder all household responsibilities while providing for my mother-in-law. Then, amidst this routine, an unexpected call from my father shattered the fragile equilibrium. Revealing his terminal cancer diagnosis, he urged acceptance of fate. Tears streamed down my face as he gently comforted me, prompting a flood of questions about his own acceptance. Balancing work, household chores, and visits to my father's hospital bed became an intricate dance. While my job offered some flexibility, managing the household proved challenging. When I informed Jack of my intention to care for my father, his response was detached, merely acknowledging the difficulty of the situation. His solitary visit to the hospital, mirrored his distant demeanor, leaving me consumed with my father's needs, with little room to consider Jack's. If there was any time to spare, it rightfully belonged to my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he unexpectedly inquired about my marriage with Jack. Caught off guard by the question, I couldn't help but ponder Jack's behavior at home and his mother's conduct. My hesitation did not go unnoticed by my father, who offered comforting words, assuring me that I need not endure any hardships and urged me to prioritize my own happiness. Overwhelmed by emotion, tears welled in my eyes, and my father silently but firmly clasped my hand. 3 months later, the inevitable moment arrived, and my father passed away, leaving me engulfed in profound sorrow. Amidst arranging the funeral, Jack displayed no interest in my grief and offered no assistance with the preparations. Despite his indifference, I was too preoccupied with the funeral arrangements to pay much attention to him. The funeral drew many friends and acquaintances, transforming it into a heartfelt farewell, even attended by the seemingly detached Jack and his mother. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer regarding my father's inheritance. After arranging a meeting and listening to the explanation, I was stunned by the revelation. Despite deductions such as inheritance tax, my father's estate amounted to over $3 million, amassed from his earnings as a doctor and real estate investments. To my astonishment and gratitude, all of it was to be inherited by me, his only daughter. Wrapped in a mix of surprise and apprehension at the prospect of handling such a substantial sum, I proceeded with the inheritance process. Upon returning home, I laid out the documents received from the lawyer on my desk and began reading through them. Exhaustion soon overwhelmed me, and I drifted off to sleep on the sofa for a brief respite. Upon awakening, I heard cheerful voices in the distance, realizing that Jack and his mother had arrived. Confused by Jack's sudden enthusiasm, I noticed him holding the inheritance papers I had left on the desk. Shocked and angered by his intrusion, I confronted him for rifling through the documents without permission. However, my mother-in-law, unfazed, cheerfully interjected, "Wow, an inheritance of $3 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives." Perplexed by her sudden enthusiasm, I couldn't comprehend her words. Jack's demeanor shifted, and he adopted a more serious tone as he continued. "By the way, about this $3 million inheritance, I've decided it will be split between me and my mom. It was right after my father's funeral." Jack, having perused the inheritance documents meant for me without permission, remarked, "Kelly, don't be too greedy. Now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man." Startled, I inadvertently blurted out, "Doddering old man? Are you talking about my dad?" Ignoring my confusion, Jack and my mother-in-law excitedly discussed plans of buying a new car and indulging in shopping sprees. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I reached my breaking point. Burdened with household chores and insulted by their disregard for my father, I mustered a forced smile and acquiesced to their plans. My mother-in-law, seemingly satisfied, cheerfully remarked, "That's the spirit, Kelly," quick to agree. "Now make sure you work hard and earn money. I don't want our savings to decrease, so work hard." Subsequently, Jack and my mother-in-law began living extravagantly, almost recklessly, as if they had lost their senses. Jack quit his job hastily, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, leaving me to handle all the household chores. They indulged in lavish spending, draining our joint account and my personal savings rapidly. When I protested their excessive expenditures, Jack dismissed my concerns, claiming that with $3 million on the horizon, such spending was insignificant. Fed up, I issued a stern warning. "I've already put a stop to it." But Jack completely ignored me. Then, a month later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly left for a trip to Hawaii without inviting me, leaving me alone at home. After seeing them off, I decided to take action. About a week later, while relaxing at home, I heard a loud knock on the door. Wondering what was happening, I glanced at the intercom monitor and saw Jack and my mother-in-law, both dressed in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. "What do you want?" I asked calmly and coldly, my anger palpable. Jack yelled back, "What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open?" Seeing them confused, I confidently answered through the intercom, "Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course it won't open." "What? Why?" Jack exclaimed. "Let's talk over this calmly at the nearby cafe." "Please go ahead. I'll join you shortly," I suggested. After some futile shouting in front of the entrance, Jack and his mother headed to the cafe. Once I confirmed they had left, I made my way to the cafe. Upon arrival, I saw Jack and his mother, who had arrived earlier, waiting in a state of fury. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks?" "Hand over the new keys right now," Jack demanded. "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house," I calmly told them, facing Jack's visible anger. I presented a piece of paper. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me?" His mother was equally shocked and bewildered. "Why has it come to this?" she asked quietly, panicked and flustered. "By the way, you've been spending lavishly every day. Are you sure your finances are okay?" I questioned calmly. "What money?" "Of course, it's fine," Jack retorted vehemently. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account." "Look, I'll show you right now," Jack said, taking out his smartphone and opening the banking app to check the account. But his expression changed abruptly. "What? What's this? Why is the money gone?" "It was there just the other day," Jack exclaimed, his face turning to anger. Hearing his words, his mother also hurriedly checked her phone, her face showing confusion. I revealed the truth to them as they panicked, not understanding the situation. "Of course, it's gone. I'm divorcing you." So I moved the $50,000 to my account as part of the property division. I explained calmly. "What do you mean?" Jack's face turned to anger for a moment, but then he smirked, as if remembering something. "Fine, I'll divorce you, then transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right?" "Well, you might be misunderstanding something," I replied calmly. "Why didn't you know?" "The inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count for property division." There was a moment of silence between us. Then Jack and his mother's expressions changed drastically. Perhaps they truly believed they would receive part of my inheritance. I was just astonished and could only sigh in disbelief. "No, that can't be true. That's impossible." His mother's face turned red with a mix of denial and anger. "Please, check for yourself," I said mockingly. Jack started frantically searching on his smartphone. "It says here, property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property. Therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses." Seriously. His mother too looked at the screen in shock. Then Jack approached me, pleading desperately. "Kelly, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me?" Faced with Jack's pleading, I spoke to him clearly and firmly. "What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you. I'll go to court if I have to." Intimidated by my fierce demeanor, which they had never seen before, Jack and his mother shrunk back in fear, whimpering softly. Leaving the two of them dejected, I walked out of the cafe. Later on, Jack and I were able to go through the divorce proceedings without any issues. The $50,000 I had moved from our joint account was recognized as part of the marital property division. Eventually, I managed to get Jack and his mother out of my house. Jack, having already squandered the money from the property division, found himself penniless. Furthermore, he was overwhelmed with bills from the overseas trip and other expenses he had paid for with his credit card. Quickly sinking into debt, Jack and his mother had to take on even more debt to make these payments, and they now live in a rundown apartment, working tirelessly every day to pay off their debts. The stark contrast to their former lavish lifestyle has been a huge shock for them. On the other hand, I sold a condo I used to share with Jack. Then, I moved into the apartment that used to belong to my father. I continue to work as before, but with the inheritance I received from my father, I am living a comfortable life financially. With gratitude to my late father in my heart, I want to start anew and cherish my life ahead. I aim to protect my happiness and spend my days peacefully. Mom, Dad's going to kill us. We have to get out now. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my son screaming. The smell of burning flesh woke me further, soon followed by smoke filling the room where we slept. There's a fire. We have to get out of here right now, I exclaimed. I hurried to open the door to our room, but the doorknob wouldn't budge. It seemed locked with something. I felt despair creeping in, thinking we had lost our way out, and it might be the end of us. Then, my 10-year-old son shouted, "No time to dwell." His quick thinking saved us, and we began our escape. Later, we sought revenge against my husband. I, Violet, 38 years old, had graduated from college and worked for an advertising agency. I married my former colleague, Darren, 12 years ago, and together we have a son. Darren loves motorcycles and spends his days off doing maintenance on them. Our son, Roger, has a keen interest in solving cases on TV, often deducing suspects and motives. His accuracy surprises me, as he's often right when the suspect is caught. When Roger was younger, Darren adored him, but over time, he stopped interacting with him, dismissing Roger's insights as mere childish guesses. One day, while Darren was in the bath, Roger entered the study, sniffed the suit on the hanger, and asked, "Mom, has Dad changed his place of work recently?" "No, he's been a salesman at the same agency for a long time," I replied. Roger explained, "When Dad came home earlier, he mentioned being busy at work and going out in this heat all day, but his suit doesn't smell sweaty at all. I think he used deodorant. He'll get angry if you go into the study, so you should leave now." Roger persisted, still not convinced. However, as the bathroom door opened, he had no choice but to leave the study. Returning to the living room with a notebook, Roger said to my husband, "My school teacher gave me homework on what kind of work my dad does. What's the name of your company, and what do you do?" "I work in sales for the Scan Advertisement Agency." My husband replied, surprisingly detailed in his response, unlike his usual interactions with Roger. Later, during dinner, my husband suddenly lost his appetite and excused himself to bed without eating. "Daddy is tired. Let him have dinner at least," I said, trying to ease the tension. "I told you what his job is, didn't I?" "I'm sorry, but there's something that's been bothering me," Roger said. "Did you see how he kept putting his hand on his throat when he was talking to me? It's a behavior often seen in courtrooms where the perpetrator makes such a gesture when someone gets to the point. It also bothered me that he was staring at me with his eyes glazed over. You know, when you lie, you don't look away. It's usually the other way around." My son's reasoning, which I usually dismissed, seemed credible to me. Until just a few months ago, my husband was the kind of person who, when he came home from work, would leave his bag to me and rush off to take a bath because he was worried about the smell of sweat. But before I knew it, he started handling his belongings himself, even putting his suits and pants away in his study. He only handed them to me when needed for cleaning. Maybe he is hiding something from me. Feeling anxious, I waited until I was sure my husband was asleep before quietly searching through his pants pockets. My heart raced as I found a receipt for a lavish lunch costing 20,000 yen from a fancy restaurant in a hotel far from where my husband claimed to have been. Startled, I felt a presence behind me and turned to see my husband holding a glass of water. "What are you doing in my study?" he demanded. "I thought it was time to take your trousers to the cleaners," I stammered, dropping the receipt. He picked it up, his expression horrified. "I didn't ask for it. You act like a thief at this time of night. You've got to be kidding me. Don't be so angry just because I saw a receipt in your pocket. I pleaded. I can't be with a sneaky. Get out of here right now. He interrupted, his voice rising. He slammed the cup on the desk, startling our son, who rushed out asking what was wrong. Roger tried to intervene, but my husband's anger didn't subside. As tensions escalated, my husband began emptying his bag onto the floor. A prepaid cell phone and a business card case, both unfamiliar to me, fell out. What are you doing with a prepaid cell phone when you have a smartphone? I questioned, bewildered. I'm using it for work, he snapped. But you don't really go to work, do you? I pressed, my suspicion growing. And this business card isn't right, I exclaimed, feeling a surge of alarm. Stop it. Don't touch my stuff, he bellowed, growing increasingly agitated. He then forcibly kicked me and our son out of the study, leaving us reeling with shock and confusion. My son began to tamper with my husband's phone, which was charging in the living room. I whispered a warning, urging him not to provoke my husband further. Don't do this. Don't get on his nerves anymore, I cautioned. It will be over soon, my son assured me cryptically, operating something on the phone. After that, I left my husband in the study and retreated to my own bedroom with my son. The questions about the extra phone lingered in my mind, but dwelling on them didn't provide answers. I resolved to keep a close watch and confront my husband directly when the time was right. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my husband packing his luggage. Concerned, I asked if he was planning to leave because of our argument. His response surprised me. I just got a call from the company. I have to go on a business trip to New York, he explained. They'd opened a new branch there since I quit. Also, I need you to get some kerosene for me. I'll be using it to do maintenance on my bike during the summer. I'll be back tomorrow at noon, so make sure you have it ready by the end of the day. I felt relieved hearing my husband's calm tone, a stark contrast from the tension of the previous day. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something about him seemed off, different from his usual self. After sending Darren out, I arranged for kerosene to be delivered from the gas station, despite it being out of season. Later, as the end of the school day approached before summer vacation, my son was surprised by the unusual delivery. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, and I understood his unspoken thoughts, but decided not to pursue them further. That night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, my son joined me, sensing my unease. It was the first time we'd slept together in a long while. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, he woke me up with a scream. As I opened my eyes, Roger urgently pulled my hand. We're going to be killed by Daddy. Let's get out of here right now, he exclaimed. Confused, I smelled burning and saw fire outside the window. Coughing from the smoke, I tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't budge. I couldn't shake the image of Darren asking me to buy kerosene. Trapped on the second floor, I felt hopeless. But Roger didn't give up. He quickly directed me to the water server, telling me to shower and tying sheets together for an escape. We climbed out the window onto the first floor, where the wind helped clear the smoke. As we watched our home burn, I cried, feeling like I was in a nightmare. But Roger remained strangely composed. My guess was right. I've got your phone, so I'll check it out, he said calmly. Panic rose within me. What if you have my phone? We need to call the fire department, I insisted. No, I don't want Dad to know we're alive, Roger replied, his focus unwavering as he operated his phone. I put a GPS app on his phone last night. He's right in our neighborhood. I couldn't believe it. You're kidding? I murmured, overwhelmed. Stay calm, Mom. I'm here with you. It's going to be okay, Roger reassured me. Let's get somewhere safe. Before we left, Roger made anonymous calls to the fire department to ensure our neighbor's safety. I marveled at his actions as we bought clothes and sought refuge in a nearby business hotel. I checked my husband's whereabouts again and discovered he was at a luxury hotel about a 30-minute drive from our house, just as my son had suggested. The thought made me shiver uncontrollably, unable to shake off the feeling of dread. I spent a sleepless night pondering how to confirm the truth. The next afternoon, while watching TV, the news showed our burned-down house and my husband, tearfully pleading for information about us. But something about his expression seemed off to me. That's a typical fake crying expression, I muttered to myself, analyzing his demeanor. Why do you think that? He's pretending to be sad, but the corners of his mouth are upturned, my son observed astutely. It's because he thinks it's funny to fool people. As I scrutinized my husband's face, I noticed the subtle grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. If this was Darren's true nature, my son might be in danger again. Determined not to sit idly by, I decided to keep an eye on him. I don't want to be alone, my son insisted, refusing to stay behind. Reluctantly, I agreed, and we headed to the luxury hotel together, relying on GPS. While waiting, my husband emerged from the hotel, his demeanor light and carefree, humming to himself. Without hesitation, he entered a nearby house, which we later discovered belonged to an elderly woman. Minutes later, he emerged with a black bag, which he hadn't been carrying earlier. Curious, he then entered a park, leaving the bag behind upon his exit. Suspicious of his behavior, but lacking concrete evidence, we watched as my son bravely approached the house and rang the intercom. An elderly woman answered, and my son's expression saddened. My dad came here earlier, didn't he? Did he give you a business card identical to this one? He asked, presenting a banker's business card. The woman nodded and retrieved an identical card from her purse, her surprise evident when shown our family photo. She explained that she had recently lost her husband and was living alone. This morning, she had received a call claiming her husband had an inheritance in a hidden account, but she needed to pay an inheritance fee. They were returning tomorrow to collect the remainder. Realization dawned on me. Dad is doing something wrong, my son asserted. If my husband is deceiving you, I can't forgive him. Will you help me find out the truth? In addition, I shared our situation with Ms. Hallman, who nodded in agreement, having seen it on the daytime news. Determined to confront my husband, I hastily prepared for the next day. As expected, my husband arrived at Ms. Hallman's house at 7:00 p.m. to collect the money. He then proceeded to the same park as the previous day. I began, my voice laced with resentment as my son and I confronted him from the shadows. My husband's knees buckled, trembling in fear. It was you who put us through hell, wasn't it? My son accused, his tone seething with anger. You set our house on fire with the kerosene you made me buy for your motorcycle maintenance lie. Trembling with fear, my husband stammered out an apology. My son dropped his banker business card at his feet, mocking his deceit. It's funny how you have so many of these when you're not a banker. Are you scamming people? My son questioned, his words piercing through my husband's defenses. Feeling intolerant, I stepped forward, staring him down. We saw what was in your bag. You didn't want us to find out, so you tried to end us, didn't you? My husband hesitated, reluctant to confess. Disgusted, I confronted him further, demanding answers. Why did you commit fraud? I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. Was it just for money? My husband's feeble attempts to evade only fueled my frustration. Please be gone already, he pleaded desperately, but it was too late. The detective, hidden in the shadows, emerged, seizing my husband as he confessed to everything. My husband's surprise was palpable as he was handcuffed and led away by the police. After seeing him off, my son and I exchanged a triumphant fist bump. We had done it. My husband was apprehended, and justice was served. My husband was sentenced to a long prison term for fraud and arson. The black bag, given to an online accomplice, led to another arrest. I filed for divorce and demanded compensation for emotional distress. With the insurance money, I bought a new house, determined to start afresh with my son by my side. In our conversations, I discovered my son's dream of becoming a detective. I vowed to support him in achieving his future aspirations, determined to move forward from the ordeal stronger than ever before. If you refuse to relinquish ownership of this house, it's heading towards divorce. My husband's sudden ultimatum left me reeling. This home holds cherished memories with my parents, and I am steadfast in my resolve to keep it. Yet my husband, seemingly playing with my emotions, begins to make threats. Lost and bewildered, I turn to my father for guidance. My name is Ashley, and I'm in my 20s, supporting our household as a full-time homemaker. It's been nearly 2 years since I married Gary. Initially, he tirelessly provided for us after I left my job upon marriage. However, after the passing of Gary's father, his mother decided to move in with us, disrupting our ordinary routine. To my surprise, Gary casually informed me of his mother's impending move just the day before. "Oh, by the way, Mom will be joining us from tomorrow," he said upon returning home. This unilateral decision left me unsettled. It seemed my husband had already made up his mind about our living arrangements without consulting me. The following day, my mother-in-law arrived with an abundance of luggage, her dissatisfaction palpable. "It's been a while, Mom. Please come in," I greeted her warmly. However, her response hinted at her discontentment, expecting me to fetch her from the station. Tensions began to escalate as she asserted her dominance within our home. The next day, her criticisms intensified, particularly when my husband was away at work. "Ashley, why are you wasting time doing dishes? Laundry should be your priority in the morning," she scolded. Despite my attempts to explain my routine, she dismissed my perspective, insisting on her own priorities. It became apparent that my mother-in-law disapproved of my way of managing household tasks, regardless of my compliance. The strain of navigating her constant criticisms weighed heavily on me, especially during our solitary moments together. One day, I devised a secret plan to escape living with my overbearing mother-in-law by suggesting to my husband that we move into the house my father had gifted me. My parents had recently relocated to the countryside after my father's early retirement, and they handed their house over to me. Fortunately, it wasn't far from our current apartment. With living alongside my mother-in-law becoming increasingly unbearable, I felt it was time for my husband and me to make a change. I wasted no time in sharing my proposal with Gary. "Gary, can we talk for a moment? I've been thinking about moving to the house my dad gave us," I said. Gary seemed surprised but receptive. "Why the sudden interest?" he asked. I explained the strain of living with his mother, to which he surprisingly agreed to the idea without much resistance. We discussed it with his mom, and within a week, we were in the process of moving. To my relief, my mother-in-law didn't protest much and even bid us farewell with a smile as we left. Once settled in our new home, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. No more snide remarks from my mother-in-law. I could finally live freely as before. Although I had expected some pushback, I was glad I took the chance and consulted Gary, but the challenges didn't end there. Now the issue was my husband's frequent late returns. While occasional overtime or social gatherings would be understandable, his absences were often due to visiting his mother. Despite his claims of concern for her, it occurred too frequently. He'd sometimes spend entire days there without informing me, leaving me feeling neglected and isolated. My daily routine is crumbling. This can't continue. One day, I broached the subject with my husband, Gary. "Isn't it too frequent for you not to come home?" I asked. "But I'm mostly at my mom's place," Gary replied casually. "It's not about that. At least let me know in advance. Making dinner becomes a waste," I explained, frustrated. "Just eat it the next day. You're a housewife, always at home," Gary retorted. "Being a housewife doesn't mean I don't need to be informed," I countered. Gary seemed unconvinced. "Isn't it true a housewife just lazes around at home?" Frustrated with his lack of understanding, I pressed on. "Besides, I'm more worried about leaving Mom alone. Erica will be back soon, and I have to talk about that with Mom." "Erica." Gary's response caught me off guard. What would be the reason for her return, and what do they have to discuss? "Erica is coming back, but is there really something to discuss with your mom?" I inquired. "Of course there is. Erica is moving in, so we need to talk about it," Gary explained matter-of-factly. "Huh, is that so?" "Erica used to live in quite a spacious house overseas, and she insisted on having a similarly large house here," Gary continued. The sudden news left me stunned. My sister-in-law is going to live in this house, just as I finally got away from my mother-in-law. Wait a minute, this house was given to me by my dad. Why is Erica going to live here too? Well, originally, we lived in that apartment, but now Mom is living there. Besides, that apartment is smaller, right? This is the only spacious house we have, Gary tried to justify. You can't just decide that on your own. I didn't plan on living with Erica, I protested. Oh, we won't be living together. We're going back to Mom's place, and Erica can have this house, Gary clarified. What are you saying? I told you we're going back to Mom's place. Erica can live freely in this house. Gary's lack of common sense left me physically staggered. I continued to assert that I had no intention of cohabitating with Erica, which upset my husband. Cut it out already, he snapped. You can live here thanks to me, so shut up and listen. Don't mess around. This is the house I inherited. Why should Erica get it? It's a shame for you to live in such a splendid house, right? Erica has lived abroad for a long time, and I've promised her a big house. It's too late to say it's impossible now. I don't care anyway. I hate it all. All you do is complain. That's enough. Cool your head a bit. I'm going back to Mom's place for a while. With that, he slammed the door shut and left. Left alone in the room, tears welled up slowly. Why does he always decide things on his own? This is the precious house I inherited, and he's giving it to his sister. This is not a joke. In the midst of my distress, I received daily messages from my husband asking if I regretted it or telling me to come back soon. Each time, I had to express my unwavering determination not to yield. Then one day, my husband, fed up with my resistance, called in anger. Hey, Ashley, when the hell are you coming over here? That's why I won't say it again. I'm not going there, and I have no intention of giving this house to Erica. Cut it out. I've already told Erica she'll be coming back this week. Stop whining. Don't decide things on your own. I inherited this house from my dad. It's mine now. Why do I have to let go of it for your family? Who do you think you're talking to? Mom is angry. Don't ruin our mood any further, he added. You're ignoring my feelings, I retorted. My husband seemed quite frustrated, sighing loudly over the phone. Immediately after that, he said something unbelievable. If you don't listen to what I say, it's divorce. Get out by tomorrow and transfer that house to Erica. At that moment, my love for my husband began to cool off rapidly. His despicable attitude of threatening with the word divorce angered me to the core. I couldn't forgive it. Threatening with divorce instead of considering someone's feelings, let alone discussing it? I will not let these people do what they want. In spite of his anger, my husband continued triumphantly. Understand, if you don't leave by tomorrow, it's divorce. Got it? Seriously. Of course, you have no choice in this matter. A housewife, like you, will have a hard time if something happens, right? No, I get it. Good. That's all you need to know. Then hurry up and move here. My mom is enthusiastic about educating you. After delivering this ultimatum, my husband unilaterally ended the call. After explaining the situation to my father, he agreed to cooperate with a plan I had in mind. The next day, my husband, acting confident, called out to me. Hey, is packing done? He asked. Yes, of course, I calmly replied. More importantly, when is Erica coming back? Tomorrow, he replied. Why are you so fixated on Erica? To my question, my husband quickly revealed his true intentions. Actually, she's making quite a bit of money with stocks and investments. I see, so you want to get close to her and maybe get some financial support. That sounds like something you think of. Say what you want. Anyway, you need to leave by today or it'll be troublesome for us, he insisted. Don't worry, I've already moved, I said. My words seemed to genuinely surprise my husband. Thinking that I had obediently followed his instructions, he arrogantly continued, Oh, so you also don't want to divorce after all. That makes sense. It would be tough to live without income. That's right. Although we're still officially a couple, and I answered your call, that's about to end. I replied calmly, Let's get a divorce. My words visibly shook my husband. What? What are you saying? As I told you, you're going to leave that house, right? Are you moving here right now? He demanded. There's no way I'm doing that. I won't return to a house with an unreasonable husband and a bullying mother-in-law, I asserted. What do you mean by that? We promised you would leave that house, he protested. Yes, that's right. I already did, as we agreed. I told you I've already moved. Don't mess with me, I said firmly. If that's the case, where are you now? Feeling the pressure, my husband's tone became faster. It was a sign that he was losing his composure. I'm at my parents' place now, I revealed. Huh? You moved to the countryside where your parents live? He asked, surprised. Yes, I moved to the countryside where my parents live. So I won't be returning back to your place, I confirmed. What? Is that so? My husband's tone expressed a sense of relief. Well, that doesn't matter if that house goes to Erica. $500,000, huh? I put that house, which my father gave me, up for sale. So if you really want to give it to Erica, buy it for $500,000, I declared. You're joking, right? My husband's disbelief was palpable. I'm not joking. Since the house is still in my father's name, I asked him to put it up for sale. In fact, the cooperation I saw from my father was for the sale of the house. My father had told me before, when the time comes for you to live as you like, or if you face any trouble, let me know. The appraisal result was $500,000. So we immediately put it up for sale, I explained. My husband choked on his words and started cursing. What the hell are you doing? Whatever you want, I won't forgive you. I don't need your forgiveness. We're getting a divorce soon anyway. Do you understand your position? Being alone and facing difficulties is much better than being with you forever, I retorted. Oh, well, Erica is coming back soon, you know. I'll tell you, I'm counting on Erica's money, he continued. If you really want to settle things with Erica, buy the house for $500,000 if you can, I challenged. That's not something she can do. Erica is making money through investments, right? If you want to settle it with her so much, you can buy the house for $500,000. How much can Erica offer? He tried to deflect. He continued to make excuses without a hint of apology. Seeing it as a waste of time, I confronted him. I don't have time to deal with such foolishness. Did you think threatening with divorce would make me willingly give up the house? Just because I'm a housewife doesn't mean I'll obediently follow whatever you say. Wait, calm down, calm down. The one panicking here is you, isn't it? He attempted to regain control. I won't be controlled by you and your family any longer. I won't continue being a part of this family with you people. Don't ever get involved in my life again. Go to hell with your beloved mom. I yelled loud enough for the neighbors to hear before abruptly leaving. Of course, I immediately blocked his calls and cut off all means of communication with my husband. Afterwards, I consulted a friend who was a lawyer to initiate divorce mediation with my husband. It took some time, but I was able to proceed with a divorce due to my husband's fault. He is still living in that apartment with his mother. As for the return of my sister-in-law, in the end, they couldn't secure a large house, and Erica, angered by the changed circumstances, returned overseas in a fit of rage. The attempt by my ex-husband to seek financial assistance from Erica, who earned money through investments, ended in complete failure. He is now living precariously to make ends meet for the alimony payments and payments of living expenses for his mother. If he continues to live with that selfish mother-in-law, his life won't get any better in the future. On the other hand, I am enjoying peaceful days with my parents in the countryside where I moved recently. I got a job as an administrative staff at a small fruit orchard through an introduction from a neighbor. I am earning enough to live comfortably now. I plan to live here for some time to come. I will stay by their side as long as I can to repay my parents.